Now, in today's comprehensive app building tutorial, we are going to be building the type of app many of you have been asking about for quite a while. And this is going to be a multi-tenant app. Now, you may be thinking, what exactly is a multi-tenant app? Well, a multi-tenant app is an app that supports multiple tenants, okay? And this is going to be fairly common in the types of apps that you're going to be building, okay? So when you think about building, let's say, a fitness studio app, well, guess what? You're going to have various multiple fitness studios using your app. If you want to build a CRM or a customer relationship management type of app, well, guess what? You're going to have many companies that need to manage relationships with their customers or clients, okay? And so on and so forth. And so the type of app that we're going to be building is super important. And I'm going to show you how you can build such an app using FlutterFlow and Supabase, okay? And so this is going to be a complete end-to-end comprehensive tutorial. We're going to be building a certain type of app, and I'm going to be showing you how you can structure it, okay? So make sure you watch the video until the end, because at the end of the video, I'm going to be explaining to you how you can secure your app in the backend when you're using Supabase, which is super important and something that you absolutely must do if you're building a complex production-ready app, okay? So get comfortable, watch this video carefully, watch it until the end, and let me know if you have any questions or comments below. Now, before we get started, remember, just like with all my other tutorials on this channel, you will be able to get access to view this app or even clone this app, including the Supabase schema and everything else you need to successfully run this app by becoming a member of our amazing Patreon community. And you can learn more about all the benefits by clicking the first link in the description below the video. Now, in today's video tutorial, we're going to be building a multi-tenant app, and this is a type of app that is very common and has been very heavily requested by our viewers and especially my amazing Patreon supporters. Okay, so first let's talk about what exactly is a multi-tenant app. Let's define it. So tenants share the same infrastructure but have their data logically separated. Okay, it improves scalability by supporting multiple customers on a single platform. It's also cost effective because shared resources reduce overall costs while maintaining tenant isolation. It's also customizable. Each tenant can have specific settings or configurations without affecting others. So some common examples: SaaS products like CRMs, e-commerce platforms, LMS systems. Okay, so when you're building a multi-tenant app, the first step is determining the tenant in your app, right? And in order to kind of figure out the tenant and how everything is going to work, you need to ask the following questions. For instance, what is the purpose of the app? What are entities where we are trying to manage or accommodate? What's the core entity? Who are the main users or customers of the app? What data or resources need to be isolated between these users? And to help you better understand what we just talked about, let's have some examples, okay? And for each example, I'm going to give you a core tenant. So let's say we're building a fitness studio app. Well, the core tenant is going to be the studios. Okay, that's what we need to isolate. If we are building a CRM app, the core tenant is going to be companies, right? So like a company, it needs to be isolated because the purpose of a CRM app is to have multiple companies managing all kinds of different relationships with their customers, with clients, suppliers, etc. But at the end of the day, it's all about the companies. That's the core tenant. That's the core entity that we need to isolate. E-commerce, that's going to be the vendor, right? That's going to be the store, right? Store has customers, store has suppliers, but we're going to be isolating multiple stores. LMS platform, a school has students, a school might have, people paying for it, right? Like maybe teachers. students, other entities, but it's still a school that we need to isolate. Real estate management app. These are going to be the property owners. Okay. Key challenges in building multi-tenant apps. Okay. So there's a bunch of challenges with this, right? Because we are introducing a certain amount of complexity when we are building a multi-tenant app as opposed to a much simpler app. So the first is the data isolation, right? We need to ensure that one tenant's data does not leak into another tenant's environment. So this is like the first thing, right? We need to isolate them. And we need to isolate them in a way where it's secure, but also easy to understand for developers, okay? Performance optimization, right? Handling large-scale data with multiple tenants without degradation. Security, implementing proper role-based access control, RBAC, and tenant-level permissions. Scalability, designing a database and system architecture that can scale as the number of tenants grows. And last but not least, design approaches for multi-tenancy. Okay, so let's talk about some ways that we can build an app. Okay, and there's a couple of ways of doing it. Well, more than a couple. Database per tenant, right? So each tenant has its own database, and this is best for high security needs, but can be costly. Okay, so this is very much a strong isolation. We're isolating a tenant on their own database. Okay. So the next option is shared database with tenant ID, which is where we have a single database for all tenants within a tenant ID field to isolate the data. So this option is the most common one. It's most common, it's scalable, and it's a very cost-effective approach. And then we also have a hybrid approach. So this combines the two aforementioned strategies, where critical tenants get dedicated databases while others share a common one. So this is a very good approach because we can have different customers, different clients, different tenants. And so if you have like a big tenant, like a big company, you may want to give them their own database, maybe their own server. But if you have, small to medium kind of tenants, they can all share the same, resources, but still have this isolation there built in. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is the overall schema, right? This is our 30,000 feet kind of bird's eye view. And this helps me to kind of understand where all the different pieces, the entities fit in, right? We're not talking about the actual app yet. We're talking about the data right now. And this is very important to kind of nail down early on, okay? And so here we have a diagram, and let me explain to you exactly what's happening. So the first thing you want to start out with when you're building a multi-tenant app is you want to start out with a core entity. In this case, this is studios, right? Because we're we're building an app for studios, and we need to isolate the studios. So here we have the studios entity, right? So these are the proposed fields. We may keep these fields, we may change them, but this is kind of what I have so far. And one thing you should note here is that we have the ID. This is going to be unique ID, but we also have something called the tenant ID. Now, this tenant ID is going to be the field that's going to be linking all of these together. As you can see, all of these have a tenant ID because this is a way to isolate different studios. And we do that by connecting them via a tenant ID. Now, this tenant ID is pretty much the same or very similar to this ID here, but the main reason we have a separate field is because we want a kind of a human readable field, right? Whereas an ID is just going to be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., etc. A tenant ID can be unique, right? In terms of this database here, right? It could be unique, a unique name for each tenant. So something like fitness studio here, or like fitness studio LA, fitness studio, San Diego, or an address, or the name of the fitness studio, right? It's a lot better, than just having this ID. Okay. But, this is an optional field. You can have an ID if you want. Okay. Now, the next thing that we need is the users, right? So users are the people that are going to be logging into the app, right? They're going to be interacting with the app. And primarily, we're going to have two types of users. We're going to have admins and clients or customers. Okay. So here we have a role that's going to specify whether this is an admin or a client. Okay. And so a client is somebody who is, a member of the studio. They still need to log in and do everything, whereas an admin is somebody who is maybe an owner or an employee here in the studio that needs some kind of admin capabilities. Okay, so these are the two main tables you're going to be starting off, no matter what kind of app you're going to be building. You know, for all the multi-tenant apps, you're going to start out with these two entities here. Okay. Now, the next entities that we have here, 3 in this example, are going to be the entities specific to the app. Okay. So as an example, well, we have studios. What's the next logical thing for studios? Well, we have classes. A studio can have multiple classes. Okay. And for each class, there's going to be a trainer, right? We need to track who the trainer is, and that's why we have a trainer right here. And then last but not least, you know, if you want to sign up for a class, you need to make a booking, okay? And so here we have a booking table. And so here's a summary table, you know, studios and users, right? When we talk about relationships, one studio has many users. Okay, studios and trainers. One studio employs many trainers. Studios and classes. One studio offers many classes. Users and bookings. One client can have multiple bookings. Classes and bookings. One class can have, you know, many bookings. Trainers and classes. One trainer teaches many classes. And studios and bookings. One studio has many bookings. Now, it's important to note here that all of these are one-to-many relationships. Okay, and so these are not one-to-one. And these are also not many-to-many. Why aren't they many-to-many? Because they are unique on this side. Okay, so studios and users, one studio has many users, right? A user is not going to belong to many studios, at least in this setup here, right? We're not going to have a situation where one user is a member of multiple studios. We're going to have a situation where a user is a member of one studio, whereas a studio can have many users. And the same thing here, right? One studio employs many trainers. A trainer cannot be a member of multiple studios. Now, this is a design decision. Obviously, you know, you can change it, right? If you want to have a situation where a trainer can be employed by multiple studios, right? Perhaps they're working multiple jobs. And obviously, one studio is always going to have multiple trainers. But whether you want to have a situation where a trainer can be connected to multiple studios, that's up to you. But here we're not doing it, right? So one studio employs many trainers, and a trainer is only, you know, a link to one studio, a specific trainer. So, there's a studio that I'm a member of. I'm a trainer at, and that studio has like 20 trainers, but I am only linked to that studio. I'm not working at 20 studios. Okay. And so that's the same kind of, design decision. These are the same design decisions, down here, right? All of them are pretty much the same. And that's why we have one-to-many relationship. We have a one on one side, and we have a many on the other side. Okay. And so that is going to be our, database schema. That is how we are going to be, designing our data, the entities that will be making up the app. Now, the next thing that I want to show you are the different pages, okay, so that you guys can see how the app is going to function, the different flows. So first we have the user. They're going to see the login screen. Now, depending on the role of the user, whether they're going to be an admin or a client, they're going to be seeing a different flow. So for admins, we're going to be showing them a studio dashboard, the manage trainers screen, manage classes, view bookings, as well as the studio settings screen where they can change the name of the studio, maybe the address, the image, etc. Now, if they are a client, they're going to be seeing different screens. So they're going to see the class list screen, the class details screen, the my bookings screen, as well as the profile screen. And so that way, depending on who the user is, they'll be able to do exactly what they're trying to do, right? If they're a client, they just want to, get to business, right? They want to maybe book a class, look at different classes, book a new class, see what's happening. Whereas an admin has a lot more things that they are, capable of doing, right? Studio dashboard, trainers, classes, bookings, all the other pieces, all the other entities that we talked about in the previous section. Okay. At the bottom here, I have a screen flow summary. So we have the authentication, we have the admin role flow dashboard, all of this, and the client role flow. Okay. And so that way you can see a quick flow and kind of start imagining and start piecing together how this future app is gonna behave. Now, the next thing that I want to work on is I want to set up the Supabase schema. Okay, and so right here, we're looking at my Supabase dashboard, and on the right-hand side, we have the various tables with the various fields that we have to set up. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a new project in my organization here, and I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to set up a password, and then I'm going to create a table. So I'm going to call this app here a multi-tenant app, and I'm gonna let it generate just a password. Okay, that is fine. You can always change this password, so there's really no reason to save it. If you need this password later, if you're gonna be connecting using some script or some third-party app, you will need to reset it. But like for basic apps like FlutterFlow and other apps, you're going to be connecting using a different method. Okay, we're going to create a new project. All right, so now we need to wait a couple of moments for it to finish provisioning our project here. All right, so our project has been successfully created. We're going to go over here to our table editor. We're going to start creating our tables. Now, the first table that we're going to be creating is the studios table right here. So I'm going to say create new table, and I'm just going to say studios. And so we have this ID, tenant ID, and all of these fields. These two fields, this first and last, are created automatically, as you can see right here. So we want to create these middle fields. Okay, so I'm just going to come over here and I'm just going to say tenant ID. Now I have it here specified as a varchar. You can have it as a varchar or you can have it as text. It's really up to you. Okay, so I'm just going to select varchar. We have address here, which is text. We have contact info, which is a JSON in this case, but it could be text as well. Let's just keep it simple as text. And then we have this built-in field that's automatically created. Okay, so for now, this looks good to me. I'm going to hit save. All right, so that went ahead and created it. Now, for this users table, we actually already have a users table, right? So if we go into this schema, go into auth, we have this users table that's automatically created and is managed for us. Okay, so if you go into authentication and you add a user, which is something that we're going to be doing in just a little bit, this is going to be created automatically. And this is not a table that you can modify. Okay, so I can't really modify anything here, right? This is kind of a built-in table in a specific schema. And this is really a table that you don't want to be kind of messing with. You don't want to be changing anything. If you need to change something, you want to create another table and set up a one-to-one relationship to this table, right? There's a unique, there's an ID here, which is a unique primary key. And that's how we're going to be linking it. Now, as you can see, there's a tenant ID in this users table. Now, we can't add a tenant ID here, because this is a built-in table. It's a read-only table. So what we want to do is we want to create another table and then link it here and then create a tenant ID on the second table. Okay. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to say new table. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to call it users extension. You can call it whatever you want. Typically, I like to do it users underscore ext. That typically works. And here you can have a lot of information about the users that you can't really have on the other table. So for instance, role is another field. So like tenant ID and role, these are the fields you want to have here. So first, I'm going to put user ID and I'm going to make sure this is a foreign key, right? So we're going to select auth, we're going to select users, and we're going to link it to this ID. Okay, and that's going to create this relationship. And now we can have tenant ID here, which is a varchar. And then we can have a role, which is a varchar as well. You can have this as text as you want. Doesn't really matter. All right. And we're pretty much done. And the beauty of this extra table is that you can add more fields. And because this is a one-to-one relationship to the other table. And if you're not clear about relationships, a one-to-one, one-to-many, I have a course that will teach you exactly how this works. I go over it in like greater detail and I cover it pretty heavily. And so if you want to kind of master Supabase, which is something I highly recommend, check out Mastering Supabase, my flagship training in the link below. Okay, and that way you can kind of master it. And I highly recommend that training because you're going to learn so much. Okay, so we are good here. We're going to hit save. That's going to go ahead and create this users extension table, which is again a one-to-one linkage to that users table in that other schema. Next, we have the trainers table. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do, okay, and these are going to be the trainers in the schools. And so we have again the tenant ID. Remember, this tenant ID is everywhere. That is what's going to isolate create this multi-tenancy. And we're gonna have name, trainer's name, this is text, and bio, which is text, and that's it. Okay, we're good. That's gonna go ahead, create it, and we need two more tables, classes table and bookings table. Okay, let's go ahead and create a classes. And what do we need? Tenant ID again, varchar. And another thing I want to mention is that if you're creating this field in a bunch of tables and they're gonna be linked, make sure it's the same type. So if you've settled on varchar, make sure it's varchar in all the tables, right? Throughout your database. You don't want to be changing it to something else. We're like text, varchar. We've decided on varchar. That is what we're going to stick to. Okay. Tenant ID, trainer ID. Okay. So this is now a key to the trainers table. And here you can just select ID. Okay. Because classes, there's a link to trainers. Right? There could be multiple trainers in a class, or a trainer can have multiple classes. Okay, trainer ID, we have the name of the class. I'm just gonna go fast. The time when the class is. Okay, so the name is varchar. The time is timestamp. Okay, and here you can choose if you want date and time, no time zone, date and time including time zone. Okay, so here you can kind of decide what you want. Okay, I'm just going to use timestamp without time zone. We're assuming we're not like international, right? This is all local. So we can just store it without a time zone just to keep it simple. Okay. And here you can kind of decide that you want int 2, int 4, int 8. Typically for capacity, int 2 should be enough. But if you're not sure, you can use numeric. I'm just going to use int 2 because I know that this should be enough for capacity. Let's go ahead and create this table. And last but not least, let's go ahead and create the bookings table. Bookings, we have again tenant ID. This is a varchar. We have class ID, which is a link to classes. We have user ID, which is going to be a link to the original table, right? So we're going to link it to the auth table, users, and that's going to create the field ID, and that's going to know that this is the UUID. It's going to fill in this automatically. And we have the booking date. And this is now a timestamp as well. And we're just going to select no time zone just to keep it simple. And we also have a status. Status, we're just going to do varchar. And that looks good to me. We're going to save. All right. So now we've created all the tables that we need here. And remember, we may add, new tables as we build out the app, but this is our preliminary database schema. Now, the next thing that I'd like to do, and this is an optional step, is I'd like to create some dummy data or some sample data or even seed data, you can call it. And this is going to be very helpful when we are building the app so that we can display some data and see how the app is going to look like with real data later on. All right. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to create studios. Okay. This is where everything starts. This is what the app is about at the end of the day. It's about studios, right? It's about, creating different studio tenants. Okay. So let's go ahead and create a row here for the first studio. So let's go ahead and give it a tenant ID. So I'm just going to call it, Studio Broadway. Okay, so just like a name, the tenant ID again is like an ID here, but it's human readable. Okay, now the address is, 75 Broadway, New York, New York. Okay, so something like this. Contact info, 1-800-555-12. Okay, let's go ahead and save that. Okay, so now we have the first studio. Let's add two more. I like to work in threes. The next studio I want to do is Miami Studio or Studio Miami, and the address is 35 Collins Avenue, Miami Beach, Florida, and contact info, same one. And let's do one last one. Tenant ID is Studio LA. Okay, address is 100 Wilshire Boulevard, Los Angeles, California, 90210. Okay. All right. There we are. So we have three studios which have their own IDs, which have their own tenant ID. Okay. The next thing that we want to do is we want to create users. Okay. And so, these users are going to have a role. So they're going to be either an admin or a client, and they're going to be linked to the tenant ID. Now for the users, it's helpful to first create the actual users. Okay. So I'm going to go into authentication and I'm going to add a user. I'm going to create a new user, and you want to make sure this is checked, and I'm going to add James, and I'm just going to give a password. Now for this, make sure you remember the password here because it's going to be fairly difficult to change it if you forgot it. right? So you want to remember the password, or you can just create some really easy to remember password. Create a new user here. Let's do rob.com. All right, so I'm just going to leave it at 2 users. Now what we want to do is we want to copy the ID. Okay, so I'm going to take this ID. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to copy this user ID because that's going to be helpful to us. Okay. Next, we're going to go to this table editor and we're going to create this user extension record. Now remember, this is a one-to-one relationship. So each user is going to have a single record here. Okay. So I'm going to create 2 records. This thing here is a foreign key. So we're going to select the record and we're going to select James here. Okay. So that way we don't need to remember the ID. Now the tenant ID, we want to assign this. Let's say James is an admin and Rob is a user. So here we want a tenant ID. Okay. So what is the tenant ID? I think it was a Studio Miami. So here we have a Studio Miami. Role is an admin. All right, so let's go ahead and create another record here for users. We're going to select the record and I'm going to select Rob and I'm going to select a tenant ID. So I think it was a studio and we're going to do client. In fact, I'm going to use all lowercase. All right, so now we have 2 users records that each one is linked to a different user, one-to-one relationship. Here we have studios. Let's go ahead and set up our classes. Insert a row and tenant ID. So studio LA, trainer ID. We don't have a trainer ID. So maybe let's go ahead and start with trainers. Come over here. Let's start with trainers. Let's create 3 trainers. So this guy works in Studio LA. This is Mike Johnson. I'm going to create another trainer at Studio LA. And this is James Madison. And then I'm going to create another trainer in a different studio. So this is going to be Studio. Okay. And name is Sam Hudson. Okay. Some fairly generic names. All right. So we have 3 names. Now we can go into classes and create the classes. Okay. So this is going to be tenant ID, Studio, trainer ID. Select the record. Studio LA, Mike Johnson. Name, spinning. Capacity is, I don't know, 30, 15 students. Let's create 2 more classes. Studio, tenant ID. There we go. Trainer ID, Tom Hudson. Name is yoga. Capacity 20. All right. And the last one, let's do it. What is the tenant ID? Studio, Miami. Do we have a trainer over there? We don't have a trainer. We have Broadway. So I'm just going to change this to Broadway so it's consistent. Name is J. Thompson. Oh no, that's a class. Class is going to be for class capacity 25. Okay, so now we have 3 classes and what's left is the bookings. Okay, so what is bookings? Bookings is about connecting the users to a class, right? It's kind of this linking table, if you will. So when somebody books a class, a record is created. So let's say tenant ID is Studio LA. Class ID is, we selected the class. User ID. Let me go ahead and select the user. Well, it's only going to be Rob because James is an admin and status is assigned or assigned, I guess. Assigned or joined, whatever. And let's go ahead and create a couple of more records. Tenant ID is Studio. Class ID. Do we have Broadway? We do. We actually have 2. And I'm going to assign it to Rob again. And status is this is pending. And one more. Tenant ID is Studio. Class ID. I think there are 2 classes, right? There's another class. 2. Yeah, 3. So that way we're covering all the classes. User ID is, this is me. Let's put Rob there. Rob. And status is enrolled. I think enrolled is a good status. All right. Okay, so now we have all our tables, right? We start with studios. We define our studios. This is where all the magic starts. Next, we have the users extension with the tenant ID. These are the people that are going to be logging in. Next, we have the trainers, right? Each studio has trainers. These trainers have, various classes. They do various classes. And then when you join, in order to join the class, you need to create a booking which ties users to classes. Okay. And so that is what we have. Well, we also need to add a booking date. So I can do that. Let's do something like this. And okay. So something like this. So now we have all of this set up. All right. So now we have some sample data in the database that's going to be useful to us when we start displaying this in our app. Now, another thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that we have the right permissions, okay? And in Supabase, that is called an RLS policy, okay? Row level security, right? And so by default, when you create tables, you have RLS enabled. And that means that unless you set up explicit permissions, you're gonna, nobody's gonna be able to access this data, right? So if you go to any tables and you hover over this button here, you're gonna see that it says RLS is enabled for this table, but no policies are set. Select queries may return 0 results. And so at least we need to create one policy for each table, of course, that allows access. Okay. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that right now. And you do that by selecting the table, clicking create policy. And here you can select what kind of policies you want to create. So you can control selects, which are reads, inserts, updates, and deletes, which are all writes. Okay. So by default, when I'm building the app, before deploying, before launching the app, I want to do all, so that it's a lot easier for testing the app out. Okay, and I'm gonna call it all, which stands for all operations are allowed by everyone, right? So all, every person, all types of accounts can do all operations. Okay, and here you want to put true. And you want to put true, okay, so that it's going to allow the operation. Okay, so we've just done it for one policy. Now here you want to delete this, and you're going to see all your tables here. So as you can see, we have it for bookings. We need to do it for these other 4 tables. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. I'm going to press all, and just type all, save policy. Okay, so now we have this open permissible access policy for all of them. And that means we can now, start building the app, and the app is going to be able to access this data. All right, so now that we have the Supabase part created, we have the tables, we have the data, the dummy data, we also have the policy set up. The next thing that I want to start working on is the actual app. Now, actually went ahead and created an app here, just using a blank template with absolutely nothing. And so the first thing that we need to do is we need to connect Supabase. Okay, so we're going to go in here, you press Command K or Control K, type Supabase, and you can come over here, and then you want to enable Supabase, and you need this API URL and a non key. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to maximize this a little bit, and we are going to go into project settings here, and we're going to go into API, and you're going to copy this URL, paste it here, and this anon key, copy that, paste that there. Then you can click on get schema, and now as you can see all your tables here, right? So all the, what do we have? 5 tables here, right? These 5 tables, you have all the fields, the links, the primary keys, etc., etc. So that is all there, and now you can start building the app and successfully connect to your Supabase and work with the data there. Now, the first thing that I want to do is I want to configure this app for authentication. Okay, so we're going to go back into our menu. We are going to type auth. We're going to go into authentication. We're going to enable authentication. We're going to be using Supabase authentication. Now, the initial page is going to be the login page. Okay, so we don't have that page just yet, but the login page is going to be home, which is going to be our dashboard. All right, so now what I need to do is I need to create a login page. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click on auth, and here we have various pages that we can use. So I'm just going to go ahead and use this simple one. Okay, I'm going to say this is going to be our login page, create this page, and here we have this page. I'm going to go ahead and remove all of these other third-party logins. We're just going to keep it simple. We don't need this and we don't need this. Okay, just going to keep it simple. Let's take a look at our errors. We should not have any more errors. Okay, yeah, so now we need to set up our page. Go back to this authentication tab here, and now we can do this login. And because it's going to authenticate against Supabase, we want to make sure that we have the users, and because we've already set it up, we should have a user here. In fact, we have 2 users here. And so now if we run this app, we should be able to log in using one of the accounts that we have previously created in Supabase. So I'm going to go ahead and run our app for the first time so that I can see if the authentication works against Supabase data. All right, here's our app. Let's go ahead and try logging in using this account that we have created. And remember, you have to remember the password because it's kind of tricky to change it and to retrieve it. So it's a good idea that you remember it. Okay, we're going to go ahead and log in, and I hit sign in, and we are redirected to the home page. Okay, so authentication does work. We can't log out, and that is because we need to create another page. This is going to be a profile page. You want to come into settings here, and you can select any of these pages. Let's keep it simple for now. maybe we'll change it later, and just select this profile page. Right now, all I want to do is I want to display the email, and we can do that by clicking here, authenticated user email, and then this thing you want it to be connected to logout, which it is automatically. Okay, and in order for this page to show up, remember it's a profile page, you can't get in there because we're going to be redirected to home page. You want to press Command K, go into nav bar, enable nav bar, come back over here, and then you want to enable nav bar in the pages that you want. So that is going to be the home page and the profile page. The login page does not need a nav bar. So this is our home page, and now we're going to go into profile page and do the same thing. And now we have a nav bar. Okay, so this one is first, the home page. This one is second. Go back to home page, home, rename that. And now we can rebuild our app, and we can now log out by going to the profile page here. Okay, so here we are. I can click here and I can log out. Okay, now I'm logged out. Go back to login. And let me go ahead and try to log in with this other account, this rob@rob.com. All right, and now we're logged in with Rob. Go here, and we can see that we're logged in with this user, and we can log out again, which is what I'm going to do. Now I've logged out again. All right, so now our authentication works perfectly with any of these accounts here. Of course, these accounts, if we go into database, and if you go into table editor, and you go into users, we should see that these two accounts, they have different roles. As you can see, different tenant ID and different roles, right? So one is an admin, which I believe is James, and the other one is the client, which is this user ID. And obviously they have different purposes, right? An admin is, somebody who can modify a lot of things. A client is just, it's a customer. It's a client of the studio. All right. So now that it works, we can start building the main app. Next, let's start working on the app. And so if you recall, these are all the pages and the screens that we need to be building. Okay. So we have the login and the sign up screens. We have the role admin screens, right? These are all the admin screens, and these are the client screens. And so we kind of have to divide the app for two different types of users. And there's actually a couple of ways of doing it. And I'm going to explain to you a little bit later in the video how we may approach this. But right now, I want to start with the admin part. Okay, so we're going to start with the studio dashboard here. Okay, now for the studio dashboard, we can obviously have it display all kinds of information. But right now, I want to keep it simple. I want the admin of the studio log in and just see like basic stats, things like total classes, total trainers, total bookings, maybe revenue if we have that data, things like that. Okay. And so what I envision right now, and obviously we may change this a little bit later, is I want to display it in kind of this widget format, right? So we're going to have this grid view, and they're going to log in an admin of the studio. We're going to get the studio information and just display things like, total classes, total trainers, just numbers. Okay. And we'll see, maybe we'll change that down the road somewhere. And so the first thing that I want to make sure is I have this data. Okay. And so here we have our Supabase, and the issue here is we're trying to get data from different places, right? So things like trainers, classes, bookings, maybe even revenue later on. And once you start saying, okay, I want this data from different places, this is a situation for a view. This is a use case for a view. And so now we need to create a view here. Okay. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create a view, and we're going to do that by coming to the SQL editor, and we can, create this view ourselves, or we can use Supabase AI. So I already went to ChatGPT and I asked it to create a view for me. And this is the view that it has created for me. It's called Studio Dashboard. And this is a very simple view. Okay. So we're basically selecting these fields here from Studio S, and we're joining it. Okay. So when it says select, this is what's going to be displayed to us. And this is kind of how it's getting the data. So this tenant ID is the key. You see how it's displaying it here. So we can filter it so that we're looking at a specific tenant ID, and we're also filtering it here. And that is why, that is how, you're doing it correctly, right? With this, with the way that we have it set up, this multi-tenant, isolations. Okay. And so this is the view that we're going to be creating. So I'm going to go ahead and run it here and see what it comes up with. And when I run it, it's trying to join it on users, and it has an issue. Okay. And that is because, this users table is in another, schema. And most importantly, we don't want to join on this users here. We want to join on this one here. Okay, we want to join on users extension. So what we're going to do is we're going to say users extension here, and then I'm going to go ahead and execute it. And let's see if this works. Need to fix this. Need to make sure this is all lowercase. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and execute this. Now it's a success, no rows returned. Go back to our table editor, and we have the studio dashboard view. Okay, and what I like to do here is I like to sort it by entity type. Okay, that way I can see all my views here at the bottom, while the tables are going to be up on top here. Okay, so let's take a look and see what we have. So this is our view, and most importantly, we have this tenant ID here, and then we have, you know, total users, total trainers, total classes, total bookings. And so this is good enough for us to kind of start working. Okay, so we can get the user that's logged in, we can get their tenant ID, right? Because when users are logged in, we have this tenant ID for the user. And so we can do that. We can get the tenant ID for the user, and then we can get this whole thing, get the entire view filtered by the user. But another thing that we can do is we can make sure that we have this user ID, because at the end of the day, when the user is logged in, we don't have their tenant ID yet. We have their user ID. And so what we're going to do is we're going to modify this view to include also the user ID. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I want to make sure that we have user ID. Let's go ahead and drop this view and recreate it. Drop view studio dashboard, and we can just create. Okay, we do that. That is no problem. Come back over here, studio dashboard, and now we also have the user ID here. Okay, and in fact we can just put it right here so that it's easier to see. And then when the user is logged in, we can get all their information just from the user ID. Okay, so now that we have this view, we can come back over here, Supabase, get schema, and now we have this view. Okay, so we have user ID and the tenant ID. And so now what we can do is the first thing that we're going to do at the top level, we're going to do a backend query. We're going to do a Supabase query. We're going to do the studio dashboard. We are going to do a single row, and we're just going to filter by the user ID. So where the user ID is, we're going to get the tenant ID. Okay, and that's what we want. We want that one tenant ID and then all the other info. Okay, so we're going to do a filter. I'm going to do where user ID is equal to the authenticated user, and that's it. And so now all of this whole page is going to have access to all this data. So number of users, number of trainers, number of classes, number of bookings, stuff like that, including the tenant ID. And so another thing that's cool is in the profile page, we can do the same thing. So let's say we want to display the tenant ID, which is important, right? Because the user is going to be tied to this tenant ID. So for instance, let's say I want to go ahead and duplicate this here, and I'm going to rename this to tenant ID. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to display the tenant ID. But before I do that, I need to execute the query again. So I'm going to copy this one, copy it, go to profile and paste it here. And now it's going to have access to it, right? So now we can come over here and we can do combine tenant ID space, and we are going to do this, and we're going to display the tenant ID. So now there's a tenant ID, there's an email, and we have a bunch of other settings. I don't think we need active. I'm going to delete that. I don't think that's needed right now. So we have tenant ID, edit profile, maybe account settings, log out. And so now if we go back to home, right, we can drag this here. And so now let's go ahead and run it and make sure it is displaying the right tenant ID. All right, here we are. Let's go ahead and log in. Here we are. And now if you go into profile, we can see the tenant ID. Okay, so this user, this is my user here, right? User ID. That is, I'm an admin for Studio Miami. In fact, we can also display the role. So let's go ahead and display the role so that we know exactly who we are. So I'm going to do this here. I'm going to do space, and I'm going to fetch the role. So the role is actually in this table. And so that is a different table, which is not a problem. So I'm going to do another query, Supabase query, users extension. This is single row, another filter. It's not going to be ID. It is going to be user ID. In fact, we can do it by tenant ID, but I'm just going to do it by user ID because we have this here. Okay. And now come back here, text combination. We're going to do parentheses, users extension. I'm going to grab the role and I'm going to close this out, confirm. Let's go ahead and restart. All right, click over here. And what do we see? Studio Miami admin. Okay, so I am a user that's linked, that has this tenant ID for this studio. Okay, I'm linked to this tenant ID, so I'm an admin for this tenant ID. Okay, for this studio, right, which is what allows me to control everything and see everything via this tenant ID. Okay, and now that we have this, and obviously the homepage is going to have access to it, right? So if we go to the homepage, we have this query. We have access to this we're going to get all this information. So now we can start working on this. So I'm going to start with a grid view. I'm going to do a grid view. I like to have a 2x2. So we are going to do a, it's going to be like this. It's not horizontal, right? So vertical cross-axis count is 3. In fact, we can do 2, right? So I just want to have a 2 horizontal, which is how you do it. And then I'm going to do a card that we can do nice padding and stuff like that. And here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a column, and I am going to do inside a column just maybe 2 texts, something like this. We're obviously going to center this column like this. We are going to pad this card. Let me go ahead and pad it. Something like this. And we can also pad the column inside and maybe give it a border. Let's see, on this card, we can do elevation, kind of something like this. We can do a border radius. Okay, so I don't know if that is something we want to do. Let's make it, maybe I don't know. I think the elevation is too much. Okay, that's better. It's just too much shadow, drop shadow. All right. So now what we want to do is we want to space it out. So I like to space it out maybe like this. And in fact, well, we'll see. This is going to be the text, or in fact, let's say this is a number and this is the text. So this might be total users. We can do users, trainers, classes, or maybe start with classes. So let's say classes, and this is going to be the number. So this is going to be, let's say this might be 20, right? Like a big number, something like this. And so now I can come over here. And I have classes, total classes, their default value, let's make it 0. So something like this, we can make it even bigger because it's just a number. And now what we can do is, we can keep doing, right? We can create another one. So what do we have? We have, right? So this card is for classes. This is going to be for trainers. This is going to be for users, or let's say bookings. And this is going to be for users. Okay. So this, I'm just going to copy this because we're going to reuse it. I'm going to paste it. Oh, and in fact, we duplicate it. So it's already there. Even better. This is going to be total trainers. This is going to be, total, what is that? Total users, trainers, classes, bookings. Let's do bookings. And then last but not least is going to be the users, right? So if we come over here, do we have users? We do have users right here. Okay. So now we have classes, trainers, booking, users. So it's a nice little dashboard here just to kind of show you how this works. And let's go ahead and run it and see if it displays what you want it to display. And so right now we have 0 classes, 0 trainers, 0 bookings, and 1 user. And if we go to our database over here, what am I? I am linked to Studio Miami. I'm an admin, right? This is this studio right here. And as you can see, it's 1 user, 0 trainers, 0 classes, 0 bookings. If we take a look, we have Studio LA, which has a lot more. And this is linked to that other user, right? So if you go to users extension, you can see this is this user right here. They're linked to Studio LA. Okay, so let's go ahead and log out and log back in as Rob. Okay, so now we've logged in as Rob. And if we come over here, you see this is a client. So we're kind of cheating a little bit because Rob he's a client. Right? He's a client to the studio, so he shouldn't see the screen. The only people that should see the screen are the admins. Okay. And so what I'm going to do is just to show you a couple of things is I can basically make myself an admin of another studio, right? So I'm an admin of Studio Miami, right? This is my account. If you go here, Studio Miami doesn't have anything, right? So I can make myself an admin of this one, right? So I can say, well, I am now an admin of Studio LA. Okay, so I can say, well, instead of Studio Miami, I can say I'm Studio LA. Okay, this is my admin account. And so now, if we come over here and we log in as myself, I should see some data. There we have it. Okay, so if I go over here, you can see that I'm now an admin of Studio LA. And now at this point, you should forget about users. You should only think about the tenant ID. Everything is about the tenant ID. I'm an admin of this studio. Right. So basically I'm like an employee of this studio, right? There's the studio and I'm an employee. So I log in and I can see everything having to do with the studio. In fact, we can change home to show the tenant ID. So that way it's a lot easier to see. And so we can simply come over here, and we have this selected here, and I can just go over here and I can do combine. And what I can do is I can say studio dashboard, and then over here I can put the tenant ID, because everything everything is set up around the tenant ID. Okay, that is the key here to understand. Okay, so now if you rebuild our app, you should see that tenant ID there, and that's probably a good idea to display that. Okay, Studio Dashboard, Studio LA, and if we go over here, Studio LA admin. Okay, so I'm an admin, I can see that. All right, so this is nice, and it displays kind of the data that we want to display. The next thing that we need to do is we need to create the other pages, but also create the links. So if I click here, it's going to go to classes management, trainers management, bookings management, maybe users management, etc., etc. But this is a nice start over here. Now, one cool thing that I wanted to add here is I wanted to display like maybe the last couple of bookings. So like maybe the last 3 bookings. And I wanted to say something like, James booked this class with this trainer. Okay, so we can display them here. And that's going to be kind of cool. You can see as a studio manager or a studio admin, what's been happening. Okay, and so for this, we also need to create another view, okay? Because this is kind of this dashboard view and this kind of a little bit of extra, we need to create another view. So I'm going to go ahead and create this view right now. So we're going to go into SQL editor. I'm going to create a new snippet, and I'm going to go into here, and I'm going to say to AI, create a view that displays the bookings in this format. Let's say user, class with trainer. Okay, and make sure you include the booking created at field. Okay, let's see what this works, how this works. Okay, it's writing SQL. Okay, so there we have it, role. So that's not correct, right? This is not a role, booked CNAME with CNAME. Okay, so this is gonna display the role. And so what we can do is we can run this query and see what kind of view it creates. Okay, so, and now we have this booking summary. Okay, so if you take a look here, it says here client book spinning with Mike Johnson. So this is actually pretty cool, except we don't want it to say client. We want it to have the name of the user. Okay, and if we go into users extension, we actually don't have the user's name here. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create another column. I'm just gonna say name, and I'm just gonna put like, whatever. We're not gonna have like first and last name, just name, for simplicity's sake. And I'm gonna have this text, and I'm gonna add this here. And I went ahead and created this. And so what we need to do is we wanna make sure that we're also matching up with the other users table that has the name, right? Because that other users table should have the name. So if we go to this auth and we go to users, actually this table doesn't have the name. Okay, so we do need to create a name field. We're going to go to our public schema, come over here, go to booking summary, and go to users extension. And I'm going to create another column here, and I'm just going to call it name just to keep it simple. It's just going to be text. Okay, so now we have name here, and this user ID, this is me. Okay, this is me. So let's go ahead and double check. Yeah, James. Okay, so this is me. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to put a James here. So this is going to be James and this is going to be Rob. And so now let's go back to our view, booking summary. Take a look at the definition. Let's copy it, open in SQL editor actually, and let's see what we can do. So we need to also do a join. Right, we need to do a join on the other table. So I'm going to do a join right here. I'm going to say auth users. This is a user ID. Actually, I think it should be just ID or user ID. I need to double check on you user ID. And now what we can do is we can say you name, right? We can just get the name instead of the role. Okay. And let's go ahead and replace this view, create or replace view. Go ahead and run it. That looks good. Come back over here. And now it says Rob booked. Okay. So right now Rob is booking. Rob is the only one that booked. Book the classes. Okay. And this is perfect. Mike Johnson, Tom Hudson, these are the trainers. So this is a nice little kind of update, right? A nice little feat here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to come back here. Let's go ahead and expand it just a bit. And now what we can do is we can create a list view that's going to appear here. And we're going to expand this list view, right? We can expand it this way. And in fact, we can do this column. We can do this. And for this column, for this grid view here, we can just do this. And then this thing, we can just also do this, something like this. Yeah, this is fine. And I'm just going to do it with a bunch of text here. I'm going to do it in a card, something like this. Let's take a look. Let's wrap this in a card. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes you have to do it like this and then put that manual in there. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit of padding. Okay, that's too much. Yeah, this is perfect. And I'm going to do a padding on the card as well. We do have the padding. No, we don't have the padding on the card. I'm going to do a little bit of padding, maybe a 10. Then I'm going to do the padding on the text. Okay, perfect. And then this list view is going to be loaded with that view. And before we do that, we need to make sure we get our refresh the schema. So now we have this booking summary. I'm going to come back here. I'm going to feed it. Supabase query, booking summary. List of rows. Let's go ahead and order them. So I want to order them in ascending. Created at, I want it to be increasing. So I want the newest ones, or maybe decreasing. Let's try this. And now what we can do is we can also show the time. So I'm going to wrap this widget in a row. You see, it doesn't work. Sometimes it works on the second try. Sometimes it doesn't work at all. I'm going to do this. I'm going to wrap it in a row. Okay, that worked. Now we have a row. We don't need this row. We can just duplicate this. We can center, space it out like this. And then this is going to be our booking details, right? Booking details here, empty. And this is going to be the created ad. Here we need to do created ad. And what's cool is now we can do relevant, and it's going to say like a moment ago. And so we want it to be in decreasing order because we want the newest to be first. Yeah, so it's in decreasing order. And another thing that's important to do is you want to make sure that your text, you do this expansion, because otherwise you're going to have wrapping, overflow, not wrapping. Because with this, you're going to have wrapping. Otherwise, you want to do this. And for this, you want to do this. Okay, you want to do this, and that should be enough. And in fact, this could be a little bit smaller font size, maybe 12 or 10, and that should be fine. And then you can do a little bit of padding. Okay, let's take a look. Let's go ahead and run this and see how it looks. All right, here we are. Let me go ahead and log in. There we are. Okay, so there you see Rob Book Stretching with Tom Hudson, Rob Book Yoga. This is kind of cool. Another thing that I want to do here is I want to have some icons. So an icon for classes, trainers, bookings, and we can also have an icon or something to display a booking. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that real quick. For classes, we can have an icon that appears. So something like this. So we can do an icon here. Yeah, this is cool. And then another icon here. I just thought of it now. And another icon here. And another icon here. We're not doing it correctly. It should be inside because we shouldn't see that message. Okay, that looks good. This is gonna expand automatically. At least it should. It should expand automatically here. And also do this. But this should expand automatically. Yeah, this should be fine. And let's go ahead and set up the icons. So let's see if we have, if we even have the icons. Classes, font awesome is nice. Maybe material icons. Yeah, material is probably better. Trainer. So this is going to be a person or maybe trainer. Yeah, I think person is better. This is going to be a booking. See if we can find an icon. Let's restore. Take a look. So this is not good. Not what I'm looking for. I think this is fine. Oh, book. Well, not exactly what I'm looking for. I want to do booking. What is this? Bookmark. Not what I want. How about reservation? Maybe this. You know, it's up to you at this point. And here is the user. And so for this, font awesome, you know, I'm going to have this here and I'm going to change this to something else. I don't want to spend too much time here, but let's just keep it like that. And we can make it a little bit bigger. So icon size 30, icon size 30, icon size 30, then icon size 30. All right, let's go ahead and restart our app and see how it looks. All right, well, there you have it. Yes, yeah, so it's clipping here. Let me go ahead and fix that. It should not be clipping. Let me see how this looks. Go ahead and see this. All right, now we have too much space. If we restart it. All right, now that looks perfect. Okay, I think that looks a lot better. Let's give it another little icon here in this list view. I'm just gonna add an icon here so we can display it. Icons always make it look better. And in fact, now we have spacing issue. And so what we need to do is we need to add a row, put that row as a field, put it right here, and now we can have the right kind of spacing so it doesn't mess with this. Now for this, some kind of activity I want to have, some kind of a feed activity, feed something. What is this? Does that look good? No. Status? I don't know. Something like this. I think maybe we'll make it like this. And you guys can change it. This is just for demonstrative purposes only. So now let's go ahead and rebuild it and see how it looks. All right, there we go. Okay, so now it's displaying it. This could use some padding. Let's see what we have. This row, this, yeah, this might use a little bit of padding. Maybe 5. Let's go ahead and check how and see how that works. Okay, so that looks decent. There's some padding here, there's this here, and one thing that we want to do is, you see, now we have another row here, and so what we want to do is we want to also expand this. We want to make sure that it takes as much as it can. It needs to be expanded. This icon is standard. This row needs to be expanded, which is the case, and that is fine. And so now let's go ahead and see how this looks, that it has space. And the result looks something like this. So you gotta admit, it looks a little bit better. I don't know where the best place to put the icon, maybe above, maybe below. It's really up to you, but I think the icons do make it look a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, right? It looks a little bit more professional there.
Now, I really hope that you're enjoying this video and you are picking up something new. Maybe you learned a couple of things. Maybe you saw this one technique that you never really considered, or maybe it's just reinforcing something inside of you that you've known all along, but you just needed somebody to kind of show you how it's done. Regardless of where you are kind of on the learning phase, if you're serious about NoCode and you want to build amazing apps with FlutterFlow, with Supabase, the great kind of front-end, back-end combo, then you definitely owe it to yourself to check out my flagship training, Mastering FlutterFlow and Mastering Supabase. Mastering FlutterFlow is a training where you're going to get video modules that teach you the specific things that you need to know and nothing else, okay? So you're going to learn module by module the content, the concepts, the things that not only will you learn FlutterFlow, but you'll actually learn it at a deeper level. You'll actually understand where all the app building pieces fit in. And this is a continuously updated training, okay? So when a new concept comes out, when a new topic comes out, when FlutterFlow introduces something new, I go out and I create a new module. In addition to that, you're also going to gain access to our private Discord community. And this is where I am available, other members are available. And if you have any questions about the training or maybe even about the app that you're building right now, we'll be more than happy to help you out. So if you're stuck somewhere, you're not sure, maybe you're in the beginning phase, in the architecture phase, or maybe you're in kind of development phase, you're halfway done, but you're stuck somewhere, you feel lost, you don't know how to proceed, then we're going to be more than happy to help you out to the best of our ability. Okay. And plus there's tons of knowledge, tons of stuff, right? It's kind of a knowledge base all on its own. And the same thing goes for our Supabase training, which is Mastering Supabase, which is an advanced, super comprehensive training. There's tons and tons of modules, tons and tons of content. And this is where you're going to learn what Supabase is all about, because Supabase is more than just a database. It's a very complex and kind of comprehensive integrated backend that has a ton of interesting things, ton of interesting subsystems. And so you're going to be learning everything that you need to know, right? Starting from the database to pretty much everything that Supabase offers in kind of this, easily digestible video tutorials where you can ask questions on the training, inside the training, or you can ask questions in our private Supabase Discord community. So if you're stuck in kind of design elements, you don't know how to design something, or you have a question about, how to implement something, or maybe something that you've seen inside the training, well, guess what? You'll be able to do just that inside of our private Discord community. And so our trainings are not just about, giving you the content, kind of helping me. It's that, but it's also support. It's also this ongoing support wherever you are. So if you're just starting out, if you're almost finished, or maybe you come back in a couple of months and you're working on another app, well, we're going to be here and we're going to be happy to help you out. And so definitely check out Mastering FlutterFlow and Mastering Supabase and join our amazing community. You can get access to each of the trainings. You can also join both trainings with a special deal. We also have a special deal where you can get access to Mastering FlutterFlow, Mastering Supabase, as well as a yearly membership to our Patreon community, right? We have a special deal on the site where you can get a discount if you decide to purchase 2 trainings as well as access to our Patreon community. So check out Mastering FlutterFlow, Mastering Supabase, and consider becoming a valued member.
Now, one quick thing I noticed here, if you run this app as is, you see how it wraps about halfway, this text here. It doesn't go all the way. It doesn't take up the available space. And to fix that, and you probably want to fix that, is you want to make sure that inside this row, these child elements are set up correctly. So you see this row here, that is set to take the maximum space. But if you take a look at the text, that is set to have this flexible expansion. So what you want to do is you want to click here, and that way this row is going to max out, okay? Because when you click here, you remove any expansion. And that's kind of what we want. That is the default behavior. We want to give expansion to this one. We don't really want to give expansion to this one because we kind of know how much space it's going to take, okay? And so now if you rebuild your app, it should display it perfect. So now it looks great, right? It expands and it wraps because we've given this one a constraint. This one doesn't have a constraint, but it's fairly limited. It's not going to overflow, right? It's not going to overflow anything because it's fairly limited. All right. So the next thing that I want to work on is the classes management, right? Because we're going to be doing, users management, booking management, classes management on the admin. Okay. So we're going to come in here. We're going to create a blank page. I'm just going to call it classes. I'm going to do that. And I'm just going to say classes. And this is where we're going to be listing our classes. Okay. So things like schedule, trainers, and capacity. So if we go over here, we have our classes here. And what do we have? Well, we have the tenant ID, which is something that we need to filter on. We have the trainer ID. And here we want to display the actual name of the trainer. We have the name, we have the time, and we have the capacity. So I'm going to start off with a list view, and I'm going to do a card, and I'm going to do a text. So, and let's go ahead and do a little bit of padding here. Okay. And now, because we are not going to be just displaying the trainer ID, we're going to be displaying the trainer's name. I want to create another view that's going to help us get there. Okay. So I'm going to do Supabase AI, and I'm going to say, create a view that will display all fields with the name of the trainer. Okay. That's pretty much all we need to do. Okay, because we don't want to, we don't want to have another query that looks up the name of the trainer from the trainer ID. We just want to have a view. So we have classes with trainers, everything from C name. Okay, that looks good. Let's go ahead and run it. And looks like there's some error. Let me run it manually. Copy this. Come back over here, go to SQL, paste this here, and let's see what the issue is, okay? Let's go ahead and debug it. We'll run this. Okay, that is the correct one. Let's go ahead and take a look at our view, classes with trainers. And here we have the tenant ID, we have the same, and we have the trainer name, we have all the IDs. So we have everything. Most importantly, we have this tenant ID, which is what we need to be filtering everything by. So we're going to come over here. We're going to do a query. Next, we want to go to Supabase. We want to refresh our schema here. And now we have this classes with trainers. Come back over here, go to our list view, add query, Supabase query, classes with trainers. And here we need to filter, always filtering by the tenant ID. Okay. But the issue here is, we need to look up the tenant ID. It's not available throughout the app. And in order to make it available throughout the app, one good thing that we can do is we can make it an app state variable. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to say tenant ID is a string, and I'm going to make it persistent. Okay. So that way it's there when the person restarts the app. And the reason we want to make it persistent is we want to do it. So we are going to be setting it when the user logs in. So when the user logs in, we're going to look up their tenant ID because we have it linked, and then we're gonna set it to app state. And because it's persisted, when the user restarts the app, that, you know, because they're not logging in again, they're still going to have the tenant ID. Because if it wasn't persisted, then, you know, when they restart the app and they're already logged in, it's not going to have this flow that we're about to do right now that you're going to see in a second. So let's open this up. Let's do a Supabase query. Query rows. We're going to be querying this users because that's going to give us the tenant ID. We're going to filter by the user ID. And I'm going to say we're going to be doing this app state user ID. Okay, so now we can say user info, whatever. And then now we can actually set it. We can just do update app state, tenant ID, set value, go to our action output, user info. Here we're gonna get item index first, and then we're gonna get the tenant ID confirm. Okay, so that sets the tenant ID. And remember, this is the login flow. Okay, and so if you log in and then you restart the app, if the thing is not persistent, if this tenant ID in the app state is not persistent, it's not gonna have it. And so because you haven't logged in, you're not going to have. Okay, so now we have this tenant ID. So now we can go back here and we can create the right filter. Remember, because we're creating a multi-tenant app, we always need to be filtering by tenant ID. Okay, so classes with trainers, we're going to get list of rows, and here we're going to be filtering by tenant ID equals to, and we're going to come in here, app state tenant. And we can also sort them, right? So let's go ahead and sort them by name in increasing, which is A to Z sort. Okay, confirm. Now here, what kind of data do we want to display? Well, we can display, let's see, let's go back to our classes with trainers. We can display the class name, the time, the trainer, and the capacity. Okay, so here it's actually very simple. We're gonna wrap this in a row. Sometimes it doesn't work directly, so we can just insert a row, wrap in row. Now we have this text over here. So, and the other thing that we can do is we can also add an icon to spice it up a little bit, have this icon right here, and this icon can be like a sports icon, like cycle or runner, or maybe sport. What's a sport? Yes, I don't know. Okay, make it a little bit bigger, 30. And for this one, we can have it all on the same, in the same widget. Okay, so I can just do combine here. And here, what I want to display is the name of the class. So I can just put name. I'm going to do add. I'm going to put a space. And here, I'm going to put the time of the class, right? Just press time, type time, and you're going to find it. And here you can format it. So how do we want to format it? Maybe something like this. Yeah, that is nice. Format it, add more. This is going to be a space. This is the name of the trainer name, add space, and this is the capacity. Okay, so now we kind of have everything that we need, confirm, and all of that is going to be displayed here. Now, because this is part of the row, in order so that we don't have an overflow, you want to do this. You want to give it a constraint. And another thing that we can do is we can also do some light padding on the row. Okay. It just, so it, you know, it doesn't go all the way to the border, right? Another thing that we need to do is I want to also give it a navbar, show a navbar, and this is a class. I'm going to search for class or something like this. And let's change the order. Let's do something like this. Come back over here and this should work. Let's go ahead and restart our app. Okay, here we are. We're going to go ahead and log in so that we get that tenant ID correctly set. All right, so now we have a tenant ID set and we have this one class, right? So classes with trainers, and what tenant ID are we in admin? Studio LA, right? And Studio LA has one class, as you can see. Okay, and so that is being displayed correctly. Now, one thing I realized here while I was doing it is that on this page, we are listing the bookings. And if we come to this view over here, booking summary, we have this tenant ID, but we're not filtering by this tenant ID. So let's quickly do it. It's on this home page. We can just add this filter real quick. It's very important to always be filtering by tenant ID. It's super important. So I'm going to say equal to, and then we can just simply go to our app state, get this confirmed. That's it. That's all you need to do, but it's super important. Okay, so now we have this one booking because Studio LA has one booking. Okay, this is this booking summary. All right, so the next thing I want to work on is the functionalities, right? Adding a class, editing a class, deleting a class, things like that. Next, let's work on the different features here. So things like adding a class, editing a class, deleting a class, things like that. Let's start with the buttons. So I'm going to go ahead and add a button for adding a class, and we're going to do that by wrapping this in a row. And we're going to add an icon button here, and then we're going to space these out to the maximum. And this is going to be our plus. And I think I saw another one, maybe a circle. Yeah, this one is not. Yeah, this one is nice. So this is going to be for adding. For deleting, we're going to add another icon here. Okay, so if you come back over here, we have this row. And what I want to do is I want to add another one. Right, so I'm going to do an icon button here, and that one is placed perfectly. And this is going to be, I think, trash icon, or delete, I think is better. Yeah, delete is nice. I'm going to change the colors so that it's a white background and the icon is going to be black, something like this. You can also add a border if you want, but I think this is fine for now. So that's going to be for deleting. Now for editing, what we can do is we can just make people click on it, right? So if they click on this, on the name here, that's gonna edit it. Okay, so something like this. You can also add an icon if you want for that. It's up to you. Okay, so now let's do delete real quick. Delete is the easiest to do. You can just add delete rows, and we can just do it. Now you have to do it from a table. Right here we are, pulling in a view, but we also have a table called classes. So we're gonna type classes, and we need to do matching rows. We don't need to return matching rows, but we need to match on the row. So we're obviously going to match an ID, right? So ID is equal to ID here. That is the only thing you should be matching on, unless you have another good reason. So that's going to match it. And also we want to refresh this, right? So if you want to refresh database request, you can just request to refresh this list view here. Okay, so that's the first thing. The next thing we want to do is do adding. And with adding, I typically like to do is I like to create a component. And so this is just going to pop up that component that's going to add it. So we're going to come over here. We're going to do a new component. And we have some components that we can reuse. So maybe something like this, we can just modify. So I'm just going to say class add, do this here, and then I'm just going to remove this, and I'm just going to duplicate these rows. So what do we need to add? Let's take a look at our classes. We have the tenant ID, that's going to be added automatically, obviously. We need the trainer, the name, the time, and the capacity. So 4 things. Okay, 1, 2, this one, 4. Okay, so this is going to be the trainer, and this is going to be a select. So let's do the other ones. Actually, let's do this. Let's make this name. Let me go in here in text name, and this is going to be time and capacity. So this is going to be time, and this is going to be the capacity, which is an integer. This, on the other hand, we need to convert it into we need to replace this into a text. Okay, and the reason for that is we're going to have a pop-up. The user is not going to enter the time themselves. We're going to do a pop-up, right? So if you come over here, you can add an action and you can do something like this, date time picker. Okay, and that's kind of what you want to do. Now, the thing with date time pickers is that you need to configure them correctly here, right? We have all of this. This is fine. This is absolutely fine. And so when they click on it, we get a date time picker. Okay, and then, the user picks something and we need to display it. And so here's what we need to do, right? We can simply display what the user picked. But if the user hasn't picked anything, we need to tell them to pick. And so what we need to do here is we need to have, we can do a conditional value. In fact, this might be a good idea. And so we can just see what the user picks. So you're going to have this widget state date pick. So if date pick is not set, so let's do a condition here, single condition, date pick, we're going to set it here. And then we can say something like, is not set. Then we can say something like selected date. Otherwise, we're going to, do what the user, we're going to display the date the user picked. What I like to do is I like to reverse this. I want to have this if it's set. I want to get it to do date pick. And then let's go ahead and format it how we want. Maybe something like this. Otherwise, we're going to remove it and we're going to say select. All right. Okay. So that is there. Capacity is just an integer. Name is name. And then we're going to have the trainer. So this trainer is going to be a drop down. We're going to replace this, select a drop down. And now on this drop down, we can just do a backend query for all the trainers in our tenant ID. Always, you got always be using the tenant ID. So I'm going to go in here, trainers, I'm going to filter by tenant ID equals to our app state. And you can also sort them by name in increasing. So that's going to select them. Now we need to display them correctly. So here we're going to do labels and values. So the values are going to be the IDs and the labels are going to be the names. So we're going to do map, select this and the name. So we want to display the names, but we're going to be saving the values. Same thing here. Select this, map, select this, confirm. Okay, this doesn't allow me to do it because it wants a list of strings, IDs, and integers. So we need to do a couple of other things here. Let's see what we can do. We can basically format it, right? We can format the number, and that's going to give us back a string. And so here, we can do a comma, and that should work. Okay, so a little trick there. Okay, so when they see this, they're going to be seeing the names, but when they select it, it's going to have the ID, which is fine, right? Which is exactly what we want. Values are strings and labels. Labels is going to be name, and this is going to give us the IDs there. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and we can also delete all of this. Let me see if there's another row there. And then we can center this. Okay. And this is going to say add class. And I can see the width is fixed. And why is it? And the height is fixed. Okay. Let's fix the height. Let's do a little bit of padding. Let's make it width. Okay. That looks good. In fact, we can also set expansion here and remove the width. All right. So that is set. And now we need to do the querying. Okay, let's see how this is gonna work. We're gonna do insert row into classes, and now let's go ahead and make sure all the fields are there. We can remove this. This is fine. Tenant ID is gonna be our app state. That's automatically there. Trainer ID, well, this is going to be the ID from widget state. Right now, the problem is this is supposed to be the trainer ID, but it expects an integer. But remember, we're converting it into a string. And so what we need to do is we need to have a code expression that takes the string and converts it back to an integer. Okay, so I'm going to pass this string here, widget state, the second dropdown, which is this one. And we're going to take that and we're going to convert it into an integer. And the way you do it is like this. You basically do int.parse var1. Okay, and that's going to convert it. Now it allows us, now we need the name, which is easy, this, and we need the time, which is also easy, which is date pick, and now we need the capacity, which is also easy, which is this one here. Okay. Now when this is done, there's a couple of things that we can do. Well, one, we can dismiss it. We can dismiss this bottom sheet. So it dismisses itself, right? Because after all, we no longer need this anymore. Okay. And so when it dismisses, it goes back to that main page and it's going to display the new data. Now we need to go back to our classes over here and we need to display it. So we're going to come to this button, add an action, and you want to search for sheet and you want to show it. You're going to select this component here. Height is optional, but I like to set a background color to white. Okay. So that it's not transparent. In fact, this should be this one, FFF, everything. In terms of the height, we don't need to set the height if you do the following, right? So if you come over here and you set this column, you want to make sure that it expands. This is correct. This is fine. You want to make sure that, in fact, you go to this column and you want to make sure that it's the correct settings here. All right, let's go ahead and test it out. Start a new session here. All right, let's go ahead and log in. All right, here we are logged in now. And if we come over here, we have this classes screen. And if we click over here, we have this thing here. Now, apart from it being displayed correctly, let's test out the functionality. So we can select this here. And now it displays it. We can also type capacity. Here we have our two trainers here, because if you go into trainers, for Studio LA, we have two trainers with this tenant ID. They're locked in here. And for layout, you want to make sure that your column is actually minimal. Use the minimum amount on the main axis. For columns, the main axis is this axis right here, up to down. down to up, right? Because by default, it selects this, which expands it. Okay, so now it should work correctly, at least display correctly. Okay, here we are. Come back over here, press this, and now it displays correctly. We need to fix it a little bit, and also we need to make sure it has padding. It doesn't have padding up on top. If you go to this container here, you see it doesn't have padding. So if we add this padding, it's gonna look perfectly. And we also need to make sure that this select date time, it's set up correctly. So this thing has a padding of 8, doesn't have the right padding. So let's go ahead and give it more padding, maybe something like this. 20, let's give it 20. Okay, that's a little bit nicer. Let's also, yeah, this is fine. 14, the font size. Yeah, let me go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and refresh it, see how it looks. All right, come back here. And now it looks a lot better. And even the padding is correct. This is where it finishes, and it looks nice. We just need to kind of fix it up. Now let's go ahead and try to create a new class. I'm going to say new class. I'm going to select the 31st. So it seems like we didn't enable the time input, and that is something that we can do. But for now, let's test this out. Capacity, we have James Madison, add this. And now if you come over here, we have this new class created. Okay, we can also delete it, and that deletes it. Let me go ahead and enable that so that it displays the date and time. Okay, very simple, thanks to this built-in picker. And so now if you refresh it, we should have date and time input as well. All right, here we are, and come back over here, press this, select this, and now we can select the time. Okay, so I can select the time, let's say, I don't know, 12, and now we have 12 p.m. selected. I can change it, obviously, right? I click OK, and I can put something. Okay, now it displays 9:38 a.m. So that looks to be good. We still need to fix this, and we also need to add editing functionality. And the next thing I want to work on is creating an edit functionality, right? So if you go over here to our classes, the idea is they can simply click on it. That's going to pop up a similar component that's going to allow them to add it. So I'm going to duplicate this component right here. I'm going to rename it. I'm going to say class, and I am going to change it a little bit, right? So now we need a parameter, right? We need to pass the class ID that we want to add it, right? So I'm going to say class ID. This is an integer. It's required, confirm. And now with this class ID, we can pull the data that we need. Okay. So we're going to come over here. We're going to do a query, Supabase query classes, single row. We're going to do a filter by ID equals to. Now, in this case, what we can do is we can pass this whole record. Remember, we have all of this data here because we're querying this thing here, this classes with trainers. And this has a lot of things. It has the ID, the ID of the classes, all of this, right? So what we can do is we can go to this class edit, and we can say, well, we want to pass the entire row to you. Okay, and we can just type row. This is a Supabase row, and the table name is going to be classes with trainers, and this is going to be class row. And that has everything. So we don't need to query, we don't need to requery it, right? And now we can simply pre-fill the information, right? So we can come over here, we can do initial value, class row, and what do we want to display here? We want to display the name. Here, we're not going to have these conditions anymore, right? Because we have the data. Right? So we can simply display the data. Okay. We're going to come over here, and this is going to be class row, and we can do the time, and we can format it so that it looks nice. Maybe something like this. Actually, let's do it something like this. Capacity, same thing. Initial value, class row. You can just type capacity. And now this drop down, this is gonna have the data, right? Because we have a query here, but we need to make sure that the initial value is that ID. Right? Because, we have all of these filled in. So we just need the ID. We can come over here and we can just get the trainer ID. And that's about it. And now we need to change this to edit class, and everything else should work, right? When they click this, that needs to change because we're no longer inserting a row. We're now updating a row. So we need to change how that's going to work. It's classes, and tenant ID is the same. Trainer ID is the same. Name is the same. Time is So we have the date picker that is the same capacity as capacity. And one last thing we need to do is create an action to load up that component. Like I said, if you click on this, we are gonna show that bottom sheet. We are gonna do class edit. You want to set the background color manually. I'm just gonna do it the secondary background because that is white. And that's pretty much it. Now it wants a parameter. We need to pass a parameter, and we're gonna be passing the Supabase row, and that looks good. Let's see, do we have any errors? That's going to go ahead and refresh. No issues. Let's go ahead and rebuild our app. All right, here we are. Click over here. And now if you click this, you see it pulls up and we have all the data. It's Mike Johnson. So this says Mike Johnson. We can click this and that's going to change it. So let's say 25, 613. And we need to make sure this displays it, right? It's currently displaying the old value, but everything is correct, right? So let's see if we can update it. So let's say it's spinning 5, edit class, and looks like there may have been an error. Now, the issue that we have right now is that the update is not set up correctly. So if you come over here, you can see that we're doing an update, but we're not matching. Okay, and so when you're doing updates or deletes, you always want to set up matching. So it looks like we forgot to do it, and it's an easy fix. You just want to do it on ID. Okay, so we're going to come over here, we're going to select the row, we're going to get the ID. And now we're matching it on the row that we want to update, which is the row that we clicked on. In this case, because we're updating, we don't really care about matching rows, so we're not going to be returning that. And so now if we go ahead and start a new session, it should work as expected. Let me go ahead and log in. All right, here I am. And now if you click here, and let's say we update spinning to spinning 2, we edit this, it should update. It doesn't refresh, which is something that we're going to be looking at next. But if I come back over here, it should update it perfectly. Okay, so now the update works. And the next issue that we have is that it doesn't update automatically. And so if we go over here and we load this, we click here. Typically, the way you do it is you create an action and you just basically do refresh. Right? The problem here is that this component does not have access to the previous page, to the original page. Now, a really standard way to solve it is by making sure the query that you have is a not a single time query, but you would turn this off and this would become a real-time query. But the issue that we have is that we're querying a view, and with Supabase, views do not support real time. Only tables support it. And so in this particular instance, it's a little tricky to update it, right? There's all kinds of workarounds. But what I would recommend here is that you simply refresh the page. Okay, so for instance, we go to this class edit, you come over here, and what we could do is we can simply redirect to the page, right? This is kind of old school way of doing it. You know, this is something that I used to do all the time, and it works in situations where nothing else works, right? And so what we want to do is we want to do an instant, and we don't really need back navigation. That is what we want to do. And we don't really need the dismiss. We can leave it, but it's not required. And so now, if we go ahead and rebuild our app here, it should work as expected. So if we click here, let's say we rename it to spinning 25, we edit this and then it updates it. And because this is an instant refresh, it works really well. And so if you cannot, if you cannot use this real-time functionality and there's no way to refresh it manually, which is the case here because we're using a component that doesn't have access to the original page, I would recommend using this method, this instant navigation, right? Navigation with this instant mode here. And that works really nice. So I can go ahead and change it back. And now we're back to the main page and it is back to spinning. So this works really, really well. Now, the next thing that I want to work on is a similar screen, but for trainers. Now, because we already have the screen, we can simply duplicate it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and duplicate it. I'm going to say trainers. And this is where admins can manage trainers. Okay, so I'm going to come here. I'm going to rename this trainers, right? And so you are an admin of a school, you log in and you want to manage your trainers, right? You want to maybe change their information, change their settings. And so we're going to come over here and we're going to change the query, right? So we're going to be doing, we need this filter. So this filter remains pretty much everywhere. Like I said earlier, we need this filter. And here we can, order them by name in A to Z fashion. We're going to do that here. Now, remember, this trainers is a table. We're not going to be using a view here. And so here, eventually, if we need real time, we can enable it. Okay, let's go see and what's happening here. So yeah, we have a couple of issues. We're going to fix that. And this icon is no longer, classes. It's now trainers. So maybe you can have something like a person. Now this is going to be the name of the trainer. We can delete all this. Okay, so this is trainer's role name. Everything else is going to be very similar. Here we're going to delete. Let's see what we're going to be doing. And now this is going to be trainers. We're going to be matching. Always you want to be matching ID. Here we can use refresh, right? Because this is the same page. It has access to it. But if you're going to be editing, it doesn't have access to it. And so we can do this navigation refresh like we did previously with classes. Or we can make this a real time and we don't need to do refreshes anymore. In fact, it's going to give us an error. And let's take a look here. Delete row, trainers, matching rows. We have this. And now let's look at this new one here. And now it wants to load this component class add. Okay. And so we need to create another component to add a trainer. Okay. Now here, yes, we have an action. And so this loads class edit. Okay, so let's see, we have an issue here. And here we are passing a record to class edit. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this and I'm going to call this trainer add. And I'm going to duplicate this and I'm going to call this trainer add. Okay. And so now we go back to trainers. In fact, what I like to do is I want to create a folder for train. Now we have this folder here and we can simply drag and drop items. And that's going to be really nice. And we can do the same thing for classes just to organize and drag and drop. All right. And so now this is going to load no longer classes edit, but trainer added. And this is going to load trainer add. Now here, we need to change what we're going to be passing. Okay. And so here, if we go into trainer add, or in fact added, it expects classes with trainers. So here we need to change it. So this is going to be a trainer row and we are going to be passing a trainers. That's it. And now if we come back over here, we're going to be passing the right parameter, right? So when we load this over here, so now if you go over here, when we open this up, we're not going to be, we need to make sure that we're passing this trainer row. Okay. If we come over here, we have this trainer row, set it right here. That's going to fix that error. And now we need to fix a couple of minor issues. And so these are the issues with this trainer edit. Now, when it comes to editing trainers, well, we just have name and bio. That's pretty much all that we're going to be editing. And so we have name. We're going to delete this one. We're going to delete this one. We're going to delete this row. And so we have name and we have bio. And so I'm going to come over here and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to select bio. And this is going to be name. And I think I already have it selected. Well, this is class row. This needs to be trainer row. And this one needs to be trainer row. And it looks clean to me, right? So for bio, we want to make sure that we are doing it correctly. So max lines, I have it set to 8, maybe 5. Min lines set to 3. This is good. And this one, well, it's just name, right? So we don't even need multiple lines. We can set it to 1. In fact, we can just remove that, right? Because it's just a regular field. All right, let's take a look and see the issues that we have. So this is, what is this? This is for updating, right? So it has this, the wrong table. And yes, we need tenant. Well, for tenant ID, we don't need to set tenant ID, right? In fact, we need to make sure that we don't change tenant ID. Tenant ID is changed when a trainer moves to a different school. We don't really support that right now. And so what we want to do is we want to add and we want to make sure that we just change the bio. And so name is name, bio is bio, and that's it. So we need to make sure we do not change tenant ID, because if we change it or if we unset it, if we reset it, that is going to be issue. So here we're doing navigation. Well, we don't need to do navigation. And here we're just dismissing it. And so we're going to fix that. We're doing matching rows. That is good. And so now we don't have any errors. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to trainers and I'm going to do it in kind of this real time, just to show you how it works. We're going to deselect this. We're going to hit confirm. Now you want to go back to your table, this trainers here, and you want to enable real time. Obviously it needs to be enabled on Supabase end. So now it's enabled. That means it's going to change without you refreshing. And so now we're getting an error, and we're getting an error because we have a refresh somewhere. We don't need to do a refresh anymore, okay? Because we're doing this real time, okay? I'm checking for matching rows, always important, because if you don't have matching rows, it might delete all the records, right? You want to do matching rows all the time. And now we don't have any errors. It looks good. I'm going to change the nav bar. I'm gonna put trainer. What is this right here? Transcribe, transfer station. Okay, maybe person. Maybe sport. Something with sports handle. Okay, maybe something like this. Okay, and I want to change the order. I want trainers to be after classes, but before profiles. All right, that looks good. Let's go ahead and run our app. All right, here's our app. We have this. We have our classes. We have this, and this is kind of what we have. So we can delete, and we should have 2 trainers in our studio layer. Okay? Always have to filter with the tenant ID because that's the architecture that we have decided to do. So if I click over here, this is okay. So this is a bio. Let's change it to bio. So now if you click over here, that is changed. Now, if I change the name, it should be updated automatically, and it is updated automatically because this is a table. We can do this. That is that. We can delete it. Let's go ahead and add a new one. So this is incorrect. It's adding the wrong one. It is the right one, but we didn't set it. So it needs to be name. We're going to change this, delete this because we have a picker. We're going to delete this. This should be bio, and this should say obviously add trainer. We need to make sure that the button looks good. So that the button, let's give it a padding, right? So if I do this and I delete the width, that's going to be better. And the height. Well, actually, the height is nice. Maybe the height is nice. And maybe even the width is nice. I mean, we can give it more padding. It's up to you. You can work on your padding or you can work on this. So now we need to change the logic as well. Insert row trainers. Well, yeah, this is adding. Here, we need tenant ID because we're creating a brand new record. When modifying records, don't mess with the tenant ID. Just leave. Don't even touch, and you can just type bio. It's going to pick it up, and that's it. And yeah, you can dismiss it. That's fine. And that's it, right? No issues, no errors. And I want to fix this other button. Where was this other issue? Maybe it's this button. I think this button did not look good. Maybe 120. Okay, that looks good. There's no padding. You can work on padding and then you can remove this. It's up to you. Let's do, so yeah, we have editing. Let me fix classes as well, just in case I'm messing with the tenant ID. I'm going to remove tenant ID because when we update it, you don't want to touch tenant ID. Trainer ID we need, name we need, everything else we need because these are the fields being set except tenant ID. We don't want to touch. All right, let's go ahead and restart our app. Rebuild it. Let's see how it looks. All right, here we are. Come over here, James Madison, edit trainer. I can change this. I can create a new one. So this is, let's say, James NoCode is now a trainer. Add trainer, and it is created automatically. James NoCode right here. So it's sorting it alphabetically. I can click here. I can do this. Very nice. This real time is great. So maybe in the future, it's going to have support for views. Right now it does. And I can delete this, and that did not work. Okay. So we need to see what the issue is. Delete matching rows, filter trainers row ID. Okay. That should work. Yeah, that looks good. Let me see why it didn't work. Let me come over here. Let me double check why. We have an auth policy. That's the first thing. We have all, right? All true. Okay. So that should not limit it, right? In any way. Delete row from trainers, matching rows, which is the ID, trainers row ID. That is correct. That is absolutely correct. Let me go ahead and refresh my app. Okay, so there it is. It's not there anymore. So it looks like it was just a refresh issue. If I come back to our table, yeah, it's not there. It was deleted. I just looked at all of them, but I should just be looking at the tenant ID. So it was deleted. Let's go ahead and try it again just to double check. So let's say James and C added over here. And now if I delete it, let me see. Yeah, it's a refresh issue for some reason. Let me double check. We have it here, matching rows. It's deleting it, but for some reason, it's not refreshing, right? So this query is a real-time query, non-blocking and toggled off. Maybe if we can set it, I don't think that should change it. Let me set it to non-blocking because there's no reason to block it. Let me see if that works. All right, here we are. Let's create the new trainer, James and C. Add this trainer. This is James and C. Now, if I click here, weird. I don't know why it doesn't do that. Because if we come over here and we refresh it, it is not there. So it is deleting it but it's not refreshed. If I come over here, it is right here, but if I delete it, it deletes it here, right? It is gone, but it doesn't refresh. I don't know. That should not be the case because editing works perfect. Editing works perfect. So this could be some kind of an issue with just deletes. I'll see if I can fix it a little bit later, but right now what you can do is you can use this old school method, and that is doing navigation. Just navigate to disable this, do an instant, and that's gonna work. Okay, and here it doesn't really matter, non-blocking, blocking. In fact, it's probably a good idea to have this off, okay, unless you know what you're doing. I would just have it off because I want to wait for this, right, till it's done and then refresh, because if I have it on, it refreshes it, and it might not have deleted it, right? So you want to just keep it on default like this. All right, let's go ahead and reload this, and maybe later in the video I'll see what the issue is. But right now that is what I would do, and then I would investigate it further and see what the issue is. Okay, we're back here, and let's say I add James NC bio, add trainer. We're here, and I delete it, and there we have it. So that looks good. This refresh, well, it's not the most elegant solution, but when you're building an MVP, you're building an initial app, right? You're building an app that you want to give to your users. This is absolutely fine. Okay, so don't get hung up on this. Okay, don't try to be perfect. Don't get hung up on this. This redirection, it gets the job done. Now, the next thing that I want to work on is I want to create users management. Okay, so just like how we have class management here, trainers management, I want the same for user management. And what exactly is user management? Well, the table that we're going to be managing is going to be this users extension, because that's the main table that we can work with. And the fields that we're going to be managing are going to be these fields, right? Because tenant ID is fixed in our app, but we can obviously change the name, and maybe we can also change the role as well. Maybe you want to upgrade some clients as an admin, or you want to downgrade, although I don't know if that's going to be a feature, but that is something that you can do. But mainly this is going to be useful for modifying this data, right? Because the way this works is that this table is going to contain lots of users' data, maybe their city, maybe their state. So for instance, let's create a couple of other fields. Let's say we have a city field, and I'm going to say text, okay? Because that's going to be our users table. There's going to be a lot of interesting data here. And let's say James is from Miami, whereas Rob is from San Diego, California. And so these are the fields that we want to update, generally speaking, right? These user fields. I don't even know if I want to update these fields. Maybe that's going to be done somewhere else. Okay. And so we're going to come back here, and what we want to do is we want to duplicate this main page. Okay. And before we do that, maybe it's a good idea to create a folder, and the folder is going to be users, and we have this, and now what we can do is we can duplicate all of these. Okay, so this is going to be, we're going to duplicate this and duplicate this, and I'm going to put it here, I'm going to put it here, and I'm going to rename this. So this is users edit, and this is users add. All right, and now let's go ahead and change it. So this is going to be users management or user management, and let's go ahead and give it an icon for the nav bar. So this is users, and okay, so something like this. This is cool. And let's go ahead and change the order of the pages. I'm going to put this second to last. And now let's go ahead and change starting from this list view. Okay. And because we're only going to be pulling data from this table, we don't need a view, and we can work with real time. Okay. So I'm going to come here, and I'm going to say this is users extension. In fact, we need to reload the data here. Filter tenant ID order by name. That is done. Let me go ahead and refresh the data. Is it Supabase? You type Supabase, you re-click that. And now if you go to our users, you have all of this extra city and state. All right. Come back here and let's work. So we have this, we have this icon. We can even leave it. And what we now need is we need to change what's going to be displayed here. So we have name. That is fine. This is deletion. We need to fix that. And this is going to be now users extension and matching. Well, I don't know if we want to delete a user. Right? We might not want to delete the user, because deleting a user, we're going to be just deleting the user extension, right? We might want to deactivate a user. Okay. But so that's another thing. So I'm gonna hold up on this for now. Okay. We don't want to delete users. that might be done via some other method. And we don't want to add users because adding users is a kind of a Supabase thing. And it's not really for the screen, right? This is something for something else, right? This users management, we're just going to make it editing users. So I'm going to delete this as well. We have an error here. We're going to fix it. When we click here, we want this to be users added. We want to be passing a users row. It's not going to work right now because it expects a different row. Users added. It expects a trainer row. We're going to change this. We're going to say users row. Okay. And now we can go back here. And now if you click over here, we want the user row. And here we can pass a user. Next, we have, I'm going to remove users add because that is something that, we might do later. It's not that important right now. What do we have an error? String override here. Yeah. So what do we want to modify? Well, we want to modify the name, city and state, for now. So I'm going to duplicate and now we have name, city and state. So I want to make sure there's no multi-line here. Okay, I want to make sure there's no multi-line, that it's only, so for instance, this thing, max lines, we do not need because these are just regular fields. So this is name, this is going to be city, this is going to be state. So something very simple. Okay, quick and easy. And then I'm going to change this. And this is users. And we have, what do we have? I'm over here, users row, and not users row, widgets. Okay. And that's it. That's for updating, right? And we need matching rows. We're going to be matching on the ID. Our ID always works. Okay. And this is a dismiss. And because it's real time and we need to make sure we have it turned on, real time off, we're going to enable real time here. And that way we can modify the data. All right. We don't have any errors and it looks good. So we'll be able to edit users. Let's go ahead and run this app. See if that works as expected. Okay, here's my app. Okay, let's go into users and we have James and Rob. And so if I click here, we have James in Miami, Florida. And I can change it to, let's say, Tampa, Florida. Oh, it says added trainer. And if I click again, now it's Tampa. And here we're not really updating anything. I mean, we can display. In fact, it might be a good idea to display maybe in city and state in another widget here. In fact, it could be, probably I want to make it. So we're going to duplicate this. I'm going to remove action flow here and I'm going to come here and here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do combine text combination. We have this. I'm going to add this. I'm going to come over here and we're going to put state, our city first. So it's there and then comma space. Okay. And I want to maybe make it 12 font size, something like this. And let's go ahead and refresh it. There we go. And that is what we have. So if I come over here and let's say I put Tampa 2, you see how it refreshes automatically, which is super nice. Same thing for Rob. And so I'm not doing deletions here. I'm not doing adding because that's a different operation in Supabase. This is mainly for just changing user data. Let me change what the button says. It should not say edit trainer, right? It should say edit user. So we're going to come over here. Okay. And that should work. And now we have a users management as well. Now, the next thing that I want to work on is I want to be able to manage bookings. And so if we check out this bookings table, we can see all the bookings. So we have the class ID, we have the user ID, we have the booking date, and we have the status. Okay. So this allows us to book a particular class. Okay. And so some of the things that we may want to change are, well, the booking date and the status at this point in time. Maybe later on we'll add more data, but right now we can rebook a person or we can change their status, maybe remove, maybe pending, etc., etc. And so we're going to be working with this table here. And for class ID, we can actually display the class. Okay. We can just do a quick lookup without creating a view, just to keep things simple. Okay. So I'm going to create another folder here. I'm going to say bookings and I'm going to go ahead and duplicate these. So I'm going to say duplicate this, carry it here, duplicate, and I'm going to say booking, and I'm going to change this booking management or booking. I think in singular user management, booking management. I think singular sounds better. Correct me if I'm wrong. And here we are going to be pulling this booking here. Of course, we have this filter tenant ID and we're going to be sorting it. Well, what do we want to sort it? We want to sort it by maybe booking date, in increasing order. And so that's going to go from, today, in the future. It's going to be increasing in the future. We're going to do this, and I'm going to change the icon here. Let's say reservation, this restore time, maybe time, something like this. Okay, how about this? We're going to be displaying information. So what do we want to display? Well, we want to display the class, we want to display the user, we want to display the booking date and the status. So all of these things. So I'm going to come over here, and here is going to be the class. Now, we don't want to display the class ID. We want to display the actual class. Now, typically, you may want to create a view here, but I'm just going to go simple, and I'm going to get the class over here from the class ID. So I'm going to just do it on this row level so it's accessible. And I'm going to come over here. I'm going to do a lookup with classes. I'm going to do a single filter where ID is equal to bookings row class. And that's going to give me the class. Now here I can come back, and the first thing is going to be maybe the class, maybe something else, maybe the class name. Next, we want to display the user ID. Okay, and here, so here we need to do another lookup here. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is I may do a lookup on this one. Okay, and really that's as many lookups as you want to do. Okay, because if you do a lot, you want to create a view. So I'm just going to do single row. I'm going to do a filter. I'm going to say user ID is equal to this user ID in the bookings row, this user ID. So now we have user information. So now I can come back and I can say, let's say this is user over here. This is user name. And let's say this is the class. So we can come to class, and this is class name. And then what else do we have? User, class, and then booking date and status. Okay, so next is the booking date, which we already have. This is our booking date, and here we can sort it. Format it, excuse me, something like this, 127. And then we have the status. And so remember, we are doing 2 more lookups, and really you don't want to be doing too many lookups. Okay. You want to be doing maybe 1 lookup max, because when you have a lot of users, that adds a lot of lookups. Okay. But we're just doing it just to keep things simple. This ideally should be a view. We're going to have deletion. We're going to come over here. We're going to do booking deletes. We want to delete a booking. We're going to match it on the ID. Here we do not need to do it, because we're going to make this is a table. We're going to make sure that it has real-time option. I'm going to enable it here. We're going to come back over here, and we have this. This is going to pop up booking add here, and this is going to connect us with, all right, so booking add, what do we want to change? Well, if we come over here, what we're really going to be changing is booking date and status, just to keep things simple. Let's do this. Let's delete this. Let's take a look at what we have here. This over here is the date picker. So this is a good idea to keep, because that's the booking date, and the status, we're going to do it as a select. And here we don't even need labels and values. We can just give it, use it as options. And what I'm going to do is on this booking add, I'm going to create a state variable, and I'm just going to say booking up, and I'm going to make it a string list, and I'm going to define my list, and the list is going to be assigned, pending, enrolled. I mean, you can have more if you want. Assigned, enrolled. And I don't know why it's assigned and enrolled, but I think that's about right. There was a reason I did it that way. And so now if we come over here, we can simply go into component state and select this, because this is exactly what we want. We want to display these. And initial config is going to be whatever is passed over here. Right? Like the value that we're passing, and we need to make sure that we're passing the right thing. This is for add class, and yeah, for add class, we don't need to do it. It's only for edit that we need to do it. This is not add class. This is add book. So this is fine, but for edit, we need to do it correctly. Let's make it a little bit bigger, the button, and this is going to add the booking. Okay, let's go ahead and see. So tenant ID we need to remove these, and then we're going to add them one by one. We're going to remove this, and then we need to enter this. Now, when we're adding a booking, we need a class, the user ID we have, because that's the authenticated user. In fact, it's not the authenticated user. This is going to be a user that we're going to be entering, right? So this is something that, we need to enter. So we're going to do that as well. Booking we have. date, widget state date pick, and status, we have that as well. Widget state dropdown. So we need to rename it. We need to say status inputs, and this is date. Well, we have this, right? Input date. All right. So now let's see what we can do. So we have the tenant ID that's always fixed. The class ID, right? So we need to add a class ID. This is something that we need to get the classes. And so what we can do is we can have another input like this. So this could be the classes. We can do a query here, Supabase query, classes, list of rows. We need to do the filter. Tenant ID is equal to, because we need to have them select just the classes that are in that tenant. And that's it. No, this should be done here. That is incorrect. It's not on the row. It should be done here. So this is going to be filter tenant ID. That's it. And you can even order it by name. Okay. Now we can come over here and instead of booking options, which is this here, we're going to list the classes. And here we want to do labels. So we want to do values are going to be the IDs. So we're going to select classes. We're going to map items. That is absolutely correct. So in fact, we can just do no formatting. That's fine. And then this is going to be the labels. And so this is going to be classes rows, map items, name. And so we have the name and we have the ID. Now, that's right. Okay, so that is done. And we have the classes. Classes rows. We're getting it from here. It's all filtered by the tenant ID. Perfect. And what else do we need? We need the user. We need to select the user, and this is going to be a client. And so we're going to do another one, going to do this one, and this is going to be the user. Okay, so here I'm going to come in and I'm going to do users. We have the filter. We're going to order by name, confirm, and then we're going to come back here and we are going to select the user. So ID, in fact, it's not ID. What we want it to be is a user ID, user extension, or it is ID. Wait a second. Don't we have, user ID? We have user ID. So why users extension? Did we not? Users extension, tenant ID name bio. User extension. Wait a second. Did I not refresh it? Yeah, it has everything. Wait a second. User extension. Let me go ahead. Let me start it from over. Users extension. Yep, that's right. Let's do users extension rows, map, select. Okay, now it displays. Okay, I had to refresh it. You see, it didn't refresh again. So for, what is this? For values, we want the user ID. And then for labels, we just want the name, which we have. That is fine. And so yeah, date. In fact, we may want to rearrange them. We may want the user. What do we want? Followed by, let's see, bookings. We want the user followed by the class, booking date and status. So what is this here? This is a user. So I'm going to make it first, followed by, what is this here? What is this? Classes. So this is classes. Let's go ahead and do it like this. And then I'm going to make, and so this right here, this is users. This one right here is classes. This is date and this is status. And that should do it. And now we can come back here, user ID. We can come back here, which is state. And now we need to make sure that we have it set up correct. So this is user, input user. This is input class. This we have, and this one is input status. Okay, so now so let's do class, input class. It wants a class ID. This is obviously because it's a drop down, it's an automatic strings, no problem. I'm gonna do a code expression. I'm gonna pass it here, input class. All right, yeah, input class. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna say int parse var1, which is this variable here, which is that string. Okay, class ID is parsed. User ID, we can just type user. No, not authenticated, the one that's specified. We'll just state input user, booking date, date pick, and status, input status. And that's it. And that's gonna dismiss it. And because it's real time, we're gonna have it. We're gonna have it automatically update. So let's make sure that it's connected, which it should be. We go into bookings. It's gonna be here. Booking add. This is booking on. This is just delete rows from bookings. Yep, we have the filter, and this is booking edit. Okay, and bookings is it? It's not. It's a school outline. Okay, so we need to change it. I thought I changed it. Maybe I didn't. I changed this icon there. So we want the same icon. So let's say time icon like this one. And then let's go ahead and list it correctly. Gonna make it second to last. Come back over here. Let's go ahead. We have an error. Class row. No, that's not class row. It's not class row. It's actually booking. In fact, class, yeah, it's not. It should be booking. Confirm. And then we come over here. Bookings, booking row. And now we have a bunch of errors. Let me see why these errors are. Booking edit. Okay. It's because of the edit. So here, what we need to do is we need to duplicate add because it's going to be very similar. This edit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate add and I'm going to change it and we're going to make a couple of changes. First, let me add this component parameter. This is booking row. Supabase bookings. Okay, so now so now we just need to fill it in, right? So the default initial value is the value that we're passing. So what is this? Users. We're gonna select user ID, and same thing here. This is class input booking row. This one here, well, we have a default value now, so we don't need this anymore. We're gonna come over here, which stay no, not widget state. Component parameter, booking row, and this is going to be booking date. Let's format it. And status, same thing. Input initial option value, booking row. All right, done. Should be no issues. And it is not set. It should be set to edit type. If I'm not mistaken, we're passing a booking row. Okay, and this background color is set correctly. Everything is good. No errors. Let's go ahead and run it and see how it looks. All right, let's take a look what we have. So here we have in our tenant that we're working with, right? So if we come over here, I think we're Studio LA. We have assigned, if that is correct. Yeah, it's assigned. And if we come over here, we are Studio LA admin. Okay, so in our tenant ID, this is what we have. So Rob spinning, that is the person, that is the name of the class. And if we click over here, we can modify it. So let's say I change this to pending. Now we need to change that. Obviously it should update it. It's adding it. Okay. So I need to change that. This is edit. Edit is not adding. It should be edit booking, and it should obviously, yeah, instead of inserting, it should update the row. Update booking, we're gonna do matching rows, ID equals to booking row, okay, and that's it. We're not messing with tenant ID, we're just modifying this. So class ID is widget state input class. Actually, I think I had this. What is this? Input class. Where's this input class? It should be, yeah, widget state input class. That's correct. I think this is right. User ID. This should all come from widget state. And I believe that's where it's coming from. Yeah, it's all widget state. Okay, so this for editing is perfect because it's the same thing like adding. They all come from widget state. It's just with editing. Right? This is, what is this? This is update, right? We already sending in the data. And so when we fill it in, we're displaying data from a parameter, but we still need to update it, using the values here. Okay. So this is edit booking and this one is add booking. And so here, there's no initial value. Right? Whereas the other ones have initial value, which is the saved value. Okay. Let's go ahead and double check that it works as expected. All right. Come over here and let's say we want to edit. Let's say this is, well, I'm going to leave it at Rob, and let's say I change it to pending. Edit booking. And now it's pending. And looks like it may have erased a couple of things. I need to double check. I think you see it erased the booking date. So we need to make sure the booking date, I'm just going to set it manually. We need to make sure the booking date is properly updated, but the state works. Okay. So there we have it. Okay. So let's go ahead, try adding something. And so I'm going to say James spinning. In fact, let's say Rob, because James is an admin. So maybe we need to filter out admins. I'm going to select a day. So I'm going to create a time and I'm going to say assign add booking. Okay. And there we have it. So adding works. And the only thing I want to do is I want to make sure that when we're dealing with users, we can actually filter out. We can say, filter list item. And what we can do is we can create the condition. And here we can say item in list. Now let's go ahead and make sure that editing works. So if we click over here, we have this and looks like it has issues because it's not saving it correctly. I think that's the issue. So if I change this to 28, keep the same time, 30, let's say. It's not changing. Why is it not changing it? Let me go ahead and see what's happening. Booking edit. It needs to, wait, because it just displays it, right? It just displays it. It does not let me edit it. What we need to do is we need this. We need conditions there as well. Because if we change it, we want the new one. Okay, and let me just double check. So when we do edit, it sets booking date to date picked. And because if you don't, so we need to make sure this is correct. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to create a condition. I'm going to do if conditional, and I'm going to say if date picker, if date picker, single condition, date pick, we're gonna set this here, we're gonna say is set, right? So we pick the date, then we want to go with that date, and so then I'm just gonna say date pick. Otherwise it's gonna be this one. It's this initially when it loads, it's gonna get it from here. Default value, doesn't matter what default value, we should have a value anyway. Let's go ahead and reload this. Okay, so here we have this. If we click here, 127.835. Now let's say I change it to 30. I change this as well. And now we have a new date. Okay. It's a different format. That is because we need to change it, which is fine. Let's say I change it to enrolled. Edit booking. And now it changed. You see that? We can always change how it appears, right? So over here, this date picked, we can format it. Right? We can do something like this if you'd like. You can do something like this, which is fine. So now it's going to appear normal, or at least how you are used to. Okay. Come over here. Let's say we want to edit this. We click here, put 31st. Okay. And now it's this format that we're used to. I do enrolled, edit booking, and now it changed, rearranged it. Okay. So this person has 3 bookings for the same class on different times and different dates. By clicking here, and again, it's the same issue. It doesn't refresh it automatically, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a navigation, instant navigation. I'm going to go into bookings, no back navigation, instant, and that's it. And that's going to fix it. But apart from that, everything seems to work, right? So let's say Rob wants to do spinning. He wants to do next month. Doesn't matter what time. That's fine. And, everything works as expected. Now, the app that we've been building so far has been an admin facing app, okay? Because all the screens that we built so far, they're mostly, all of them are for admins. We still have these client screens that we want to do. But before we, think about the client side, we need to decide how we are gonna, deal with this issue, right? Because we have this admin and we have this client. Now, with the way that FlutterFlow works right now, it's rather tricky and kind of inflexible to kind of have 2 separate apps that are dynamic based on, what the user is, what the role is. So in other words, like if I log in and I'm an admin, I'm going to show the user, this app. But if I log in and I'm a client, then we need to show them some other screens. It's going to be kind of painful to do it. And so the best approach right now is to basically create 2 separate apps. Okay. And so with this app, we're just going to make it an admin backend. Okay. And so when the user logs in, what we're going to do is we're going to check if they're an admin, because if they're not an admin, the role, right? If they're not in the admin role, we're just going to give them an error message and not allow them to log in. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to essentially duplicate this and create another app, or just create another app from scratch that will be just client facing. Okay. That's going to have just these screens. And not only is this kind of the best approach with FlutterFlow, but it's the right approach, right? Generally, that's how, how people, build apps. You have, like with Uber, you have the driver's app and you have the rider's app. And you also have some admin app that, nobody has access to unless you work at Uber or something like that, right? It's a very, very common scenario. And so in this app, we're just going to designate this to be an admin app. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that only admins can use this app. And so if we check out this login over here, we can see that we're just logging the person in. But what we really want to happen is we first want to check, okay, they've logged in, but, do they have the right credentials, right? Do they have the right things? And so in this example, we're logging them in and we are doing iQuery on this users table. And then we're basically updating the tenant ID. And so what we're going to do here is we're still going to query them. We're still going to log in. But what we're going to do is we're going to set a condition. Okay. And in this condition, we're going to check the role. Okay. So I'm going to create a condition here, and I'm going to get the, this output, action output, this user info. And I'm going to say item at index first, and then I'm going to say get row field, and I'm going to say role. Okay. So we're going to get the role. And here we're going to say, well, if role is, admin, then everything is fine. Right? So this is an admin role. So now it's okay. We're going to update the app state. We're going to paste this here. We're going to do everything that we need to do. Otherwise, we're just going to log them out, right? So what we're going to say is we're just going to do a log out, okay? Because we've logged them in. We figured out who they are. Okay. We got the user ID right over here. Okay. Because we're getting this user ID, this authenticated user, as a result of logging them in. And then we realize that they're not an admin. And so we're going to log them out. So another thing that we can do is we can have another action, and we can do a, what is it called? A dialog box. Yeah. Informational dialog box. And we can say, not authorized, something like this. This app should only be used by admins, or I don't know, access to non-admins. Okay. And that's it. And they're just going to click OK. And then it's just going to log them out. And so that is something that we can do. Obviously, we can take it a step further, and we can also create these RLS policies. So there's no way to modify anything if you are not an admin, right? We can also do that as well. But first, let's go ahead and see if this works, right? So we created this here. This is update app state. Otherwise, dialog and log out. So let's go ahead and rebuild this app over here and see how it works. Let's go ahead and log in. So I'm going to log in as James. I don't remember if James is an admin or a client. I guess we're about to find out. Okay, so James looks like he's an admin. Okay, so if you go over here, admin. Okay, now there was another account. I think it was Rob. Let me go ahead and double check. Authentication. Yeah, so we have Rob. And if we come over here and we go over here, we can see that, oh, this is probably James. Yep, this is James. And the other account is Rob, who is a client. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here. I'm going to log out, and I'm going to log in as Rob. And it's telling me not authorized, access to not admins is forbidden. Okay, press OK, and it's already logged out. Okay, so if I do that again, it seems like it's not even logging me in. Like, so it's automatically, it's almost like it doesn't even log me in. It says here access to not admins is forbidden. Okay. And so that is one way that you can block, non-admins to your app over here. Okay. Because this is the admin facing app. And obviously you also in your production app, right? Just like how you create these safeguards on your front end, you also want to create these safeguards on the back end, right? So for instance, like classes, you don't want anybody modifying classes unless they are an admin. Okay, so right now we have all, but what we want to do is we want to basically just separate the two. So because we are creating policies, we want to maybe remove this policy and create insert, update, and delete only if you have a role, an admin role, and then select, you can kind of decide, because, users also need to view their own classes. And maybe for select, you want to have a trick there, or a condition that checks where, the user is, the current user, and that they're looking at themselves. Okay. There's actually like a policy, template there that I've seen. Okay, so I think if you create a new policy, you can see that insert for authenticated, enable update for users based on email. Yeah, enable insert for users based on user ID. Okay, so there's a couple of templates that will help you, like this one, right? So if you take a look here, it has this check. So this is perfect for a select, right? And that way, if non-admin users can only see their own records. Okay, so that could be an option. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to create this other app that is going to be used purely for users. And to do that, we can simply clone this app. Okay, that's just going to make it easier to kind of get started. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to duplicate this, and I'm just going to do the same thing. I think it's multi-tenant. Okay, I'm going to say duplicate, and that's going to create another project for me that will eventually become another application. All right, here we are in number 2, and here we can customize this just for what the users want. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to change the login so that now it looks for whether this is a customer. Okay, I'm gonna come over here, and here we can do the same thing, and we can say, I think it's client. What is it? Tables, users, client. Yeah, client is the role. Come over here and let's set it to client. And then if it's not client, we can say not authorized access, or you can just, remove this check and let everybody in, right? Clients and admins. I mean, admins are admins. So why don't we just say not authorized? You must use the admin app. Okay, or something like this. So we don't want admins here. Okay, it's up to you how you want it to set up. And now let's go ahead and see what we're gonna do. So we just need the class list, class details. This is one screen, my bookings, and the profile. Okay, and so for that we are going to delete users, right? Because that's a purely a admin kind of thing, right? So we're gonna do this and delete the pages, components, and everything. And we are also going to delete trainers, because that's also purely an admin thing. Delete this folder. And what we're left with is we have home, we have profile, we have bookings, and classes. And that's kind of what we want, except this is no longer classes management. It's going to be called my classes. And here we need to set another filter. It's not going to be by the tenant ID no more. It is going to be by the user, right? So if you take a look at, need to make sure that we are, well, this is going to be, yeah, we need to get it from bookings, right? Because classes here, these are just classes, but bookings is what links to us, right? So we can simply display the bookings, right? Because, that is what we want to do. Another thing that we can do is we can display the classes in that tenant, right? So if the person wants to book, see the classes available, they can see that. In that case, we can just leave the tenant there. Okay. We just need to remove the ability to delete classes, right? So like, let's say they join a fitness, like a fitness center or a gym, and they just want to see classes, right? So when they click on it, this is now is going to lead them to not an edit, to like a class detail page. Okay, that kind of thing. And so, I'm going to go ahead and remove this action, and I'm going to remove this action. And so we're going to have classes that's going to lead to classes detail just to get information. And then they're going to see bookings. Now, when they go to bookings, this is obviously going to be for user now, right? So if you come over here, bookings has a user ID. So this is no longer just 10. So they'll be able to delete a booking. They'll be able to add a booking, but it's all going to be up to the user. Okay. And so let's go ahead and make sure that it is set correctly. I mean, here we can, you can have this filter, but the problem is if you want it to be real time, if you add another filter, it's not going to work, right? Because if you disable it, you can now add filters. If you enable it, you can't add filters. So what I recommend is simply changing this filter to user ID. And because users can only be in a one tenant, in a particular tenant, they cannot be spanned across different tenants. It's the same, it's the same thing as having a tenant ID. So I'm going to say equal to, and here, don't I have access to anything here? Where's my query? Because, we need to get the user ID. Yeah, so this is going to be authenticated user. So now we have a filter, we have this, and we keep it real time, which is the best, the best kind of, if you can keep it real time, try to keep it real time. Here we can add a class, and here we can delete a class. And obviously you're will be able to delete classes that, that are yours. Okay. What is this text combo name? Well, name is going to be us, right? So what is this name? This is a username, the first one. I can see it here. And because it's only us, we're going to delete it. We're just going to see class name, time, and the stat. They can delete it, right? So it's going to do matching rows but yeah, matching rows and ID is fine. And now it's going to redirect to bookings. But remember, this redirection is, it's to refresh the screen. But because this right here is real time, we don't even need that. And that's going to redirect it. And remember, we had that issue with, deleting and refreshing even on real-time view. So we need to keep this. Maybe it's a bug of some sort. Here we can create a new class. This is going to add booking ad. And for booking ad, we need to make sure that we're not selecting a user. The user is going to be us, right? So this right here is classes, input, and status. And when we add it, we need to hard code the user ID, right? Because unlike in an admin setting, we're not selecting a user. Okay, that's edit. Yeah, I guess you can edit it. And this is input user. We're not going to be editing the user. It's always going to be us. And so we need to make sure that this stays auth ID, and that is there, and that's about it. And the only thing we need to do is create a classes details screen, because we can't really edit classes anymore, right? Because we no longer have this action. And we can't delete classes, right? This is like a library, right? It's just to see what kind of classes exist. And so I'm going to create a detail page. We have a profile, which pretty much stays the same. It's going to display the role here. Well, we have tenant ID, but to a user, it doesn't mean anything. And so we can maybe change it, because a user, it doesn't mean much to them, tenant ID, and then we can have the role over here, and that's going to be the client, or an admin role as well, right? Depending how we have it set up. Alrighty, let's go ahead and run this second app and see how it looks. All right, let's go ahead and log in. I'm just going to log in as an admin. I think we're allowing them for the time being. Oh no, we are not allowing them. You must use the admin app. Okay, so this works. Let's go ahead and log in as the other user. All right, there we have. So yeah, this needs to go as well. Right, so the home page is going to be this. It's not going to be the studio dashboard. Okay, here we have classes, and here we have bookings. And so now let's go ahead and fix this. Let me take a look at bookings. Yeah, so these are all my bookings, right? And as it happens to be, I'm booked across different tenants, which should not be the case. Okay, it should not be like this, because I should only book in the same tenant. I should only be able to be a member of of a single, not multiple studios at the same time, right? Doesn't make sense. And so this is one thing, but that's okay. That's okay. That's just a data issue. Now, this is the only class that's available to me. And so the booking has the wrong data, right? Booking should only display the spinning, because, being a member of Studio LA, right? So if I go over here, I need to fix this as well, user ID. But anyway, I am a member of Studio LA, right? Because if we go to over here, you can see that both accounts are tenants of Studio LA. And so if we go into classes, Studio LA has only one class. There's just only one class that we have it defined. But if I go into bookings, I'm booked across different studios, which will not happen in a production app. Okay, these two are not going to be there, so that is absolutely fine. It's just a data issue. Let me go ahead and fix this home. We're not going to have a home on this one, and so when we log in, we're going to redirect to classes. We go into here. I want to redirect to classes. Okay, that is there, and I hope this fixes the issue. So when I log in, it's going to go into classes. So I have classes, bookings, and profile. Now let's go ahead and fix this issue here. This is a text, right? So what we want to do is we want to make sure that it expands. It gives it a constraint. Let's go back over here. Let's rebuild our app. All right. So I have one booking, which is correct. And here I'm displaying classes everywhere, like classes where I'm booked, but I shouldn't have booked these two classes. I shouldn't be able to book these two classes because they're in another 10. So that is a data issue. And so that's no problem. We can delete this. We can create a new booking. So I select spinning. Maybe I want it to be later, right? Because that's the only class that we have defined in this studio. And I say enrolled or something. Okay, so now I'm enrolled. And I don't know if we want to let the user set it. Maybe this should automatically be set as pending. and then the admin changes it. That's one thing. Let's take a look. So I'm enroll, and these are the classes, right? So this is correct. There is one class. Now, if we come over here, this wraps. This is the user ID and this is client. This is for debugging, right? This is for debugging, for the user to see. Let me go ahead and see, this thing here that does this booking ad, and this status, I'm going to delete it, because it doesn't make sense for the user to set a status. And so I'm just going to set the status because it, it needs to be approved by somebody or whatever. It needs to be double checked if there's enough space in the class, etc., etc. So this is fine. And then for editing, status, we also don't really need to set the status. And what is this? Input date time. Well, this is always going to be set. Okay, so let's go ahead and try this out. This is always going to be set. So we have an error. Edit for status. We're not going to be editing status, right? The user should be able to edit status. Class ID. They should not be able to edit anything really, right? What is this? Booking? No, they should only be able to edit. What is this here? Class, or maybe both. Okay, so class ID. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, that's fine how it is. Let's go ahead and refresh it. Come back over here. We have a bunch of classes. Come back over here, and let's say I want to edit. I want to delete this. So I want to delete stretching. I delete it. I'm going to delete the bookings that I should not be able to make. So these are correct. Now the data looks decent, because spinning is the only class in this fitness studio, right? So if we add spinning, and then I can add one in the future. So let's say March, or let's say February 15, and let's say we do PM 12:29, and we have spinning, it's pending. Okay, so maybe it needs to be set. And over here, we can't really do anything, right? These are just the classes. This should be renamed. And if I click here, I can edit. Okay, so looks good. Let me go ahead and change this. Classes, this should be my bookings. And that's about it, right? That's about it. So this is the client-facing app. Right? It works completely different, because in a client-facing app, we care about the user ID. In an admin-facing app, we care about the tenant ID, right? Two different things, but that's the best way to make it make sense. That's the best way to kind of summarize it. Tenant ID versus user ID. We've all built apps, where we're working with the user ID, but tenant ID is new. And so that's what you want to be doing. You want to be setting up your tables, starting from the users, this extension table where you have this tenant ID. And then everywhere else, you need this tenant ID, because it's all about the tenant ID. And then in your apps, you need to make sure that you're filtering by the tenant ID. And you can have amazing multi-tenant apps done this way. Now, to show you how this is going to work, I went ahead and created some row level security policies that we can use in a production app. Okay. And this is going to make our app a lot more secure and a lot more robust, because this is definitely something that you will need to be doing if you're going to be building a truly production app, or pretty much any production app. This one or another app, you definitely want to secure things on the back end. Okay. So here we have a bunch of policies for different tables. Okay. Here we have for trainers, for classes, for bookings, and for studios. Okay. And the idea here is that for selects, we're basically making sure that admins can only work with their tenant IDs. But for modifying, right? So for inserts, updates, and deletes, we're not only checking the tenant ID, we're also checking to make sure that the role is an admin. Okay. So basically in all of these, we're filtering by tenant ID no matter what, because this is something that you have to do, and we're doing it automatically. Okay. We're doing it on the back end. Okay. And so let's go ahead and implement this and then test our app. So let's go ahead and see trainers here. And remember, originally I created a kind of a very permissive row level security policy, right? So if you come over here, this is just all. And so if you want to implement these new ones, we first have to delete it. Okay, we have to delete it. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to copy it here and paste it in here and just execute. And when we execute it, it says success, no rows returned. And so now if we go back to our tables, let's say we go into trainers, we have four auth policies. We have for select, we have insert, we have delete, and we have update. And now let's go ahead and run our app and see if that part of the app still works as expected. Okay. And so I'm going to go back to my app, and this is that second app that we built. And so what I want to do is I want to test the original app. Okay. So we're going to come over here And we're going to go over here and we're going to go ahead and execute. All right, let's go ahead and log in. I'm going to go ahead and log in as an admin. All right, there we are. And so far we can see pretty much all that we need to see. And if I go into trainers, I see the trainers, right? And I can probably modify them as well. Edit this trainer. You see, I can edit it. And that is because, first of all, I am part of this specific studio, right? So if you go over here, we can see that I'm part of Studio LA and I can see the trainers in that studio. That's the first thing. The second thing is that because I'm an admin, I can modify them. Okay. I can modify this trainer as well. Okay. Not only admins can do that because we have this update, right? You see this update on trainers. It needs to be in the same tenant ID as my account and I need to be in the admin role. Okay. So this is exactly, what we need right now. Okay. So now that we made sure that there's no like big issues here, we can import the rest of these policies. So let's go back here. Let's go to SQL editor and I can start a new snippet here. And now I can go ahead and paste this for classes. And it's very, very similar policies. In fact, it's probably the same policies, except it now works on classes, on the classes table. So I'm going to go ahead and paste this here. And there we have it. Success, no rows returned. So that is for classes. Let's go ahead and do the same thing for bookings. That is also success. And then the final one for studios. Okay. We're going to go ahead and do the same thing here. And now it's telling us success, no rows returned. Come back here. And now we have 5 policies on bookings, 5 policies here. And we also need to make sure we remove this all. We no longer need that. Okay. We're going to delete it and we want to delete it for all of them, right? So anywhere you see all, that should now be deleted. Okay. We're going to delete this one. There's no more all. So now we have custom policies, right? We're now production ready. Okay. And so we can go back, restart our app or just test directly to make sure that we still see the data. Okay. So to double check, there are no issues. And as you can see, we're still seeing the data. We can come over here. We can probably still edit this. Okay. No issues here. Change it back. No issues here. Change it back. Come over here. User management. James. Okay. We still have that. And so now our app is truly production ready because we've created the right production ready, RLS policies. Okay. So not only are we like working with the right data here in the front end, but we also have these specific policies in the back end, which will limit the kind of data that, users can get access to, even if we have some kind of issues in the front end. And this is super important that you do pretty much for all your serious complex apps. Now, I really, really hope that you've enjoyed this video app building tutorial and hopefully picked up a new skill or several of them, because this is an important topic and I want to make sure that you guys know exactly what you need to do when you decide to build similar types of apps. Now, for your next steps, you can of course watch different parts of the video. You can rewatch some parts maybe that you have missed or didn't understand or you felt weren't clear enough. But truly, the best thing that you can do right now is view this app on your own screen, or even clone this app so that you can experiment with it, so that you can change some settings, so that you can get the actual satisfaction of running this app on your own screen as part of your own workspace. And you will be able to do exactly that when you join our amazing Patreon community, because members of our incredible, rapidly growing Patreon community get access to not just this app, but pretty much all the apps that I publish on this channel. They're all there. They're all waiting for you to view and or clone them. And that's going to allow you to get hands-on practice. And in my view, the only way to really master this is by practicing, is through experimentation, is by getting experience. That is exactly how I learned. And I'm more than confident that is what's going to help you to master this app building process as well. And remember, when you join our amazing Patreon community, you're not only going to get access to the apps, you're also going to get access to an amazing community where you can connect with other members, share what you're doing, get advice, get help. I'm there. Other incredible members are there. And most of all, you're going to be supporting this channel and supporting my work. So if you're getting value from the content that I'm putting out, from the content that I'm sharing, if you've learned something, maybe I've helped you, overcome some barrier, pass some roadblock, or, solve a particular problem, then you're going to get so much more content, so much more value by becoming a member of our incredible Patreon community. And so if you're serious about no code, then it's a no-brainer move. So definitely click the first link in the description below and consider becoming a member of our incredible Patreon community.